Welcome to Inferno Part 1, The Vault Anthology, a scorching collection from the brilliant mind of KLeigh. This isn't just a story, it's an experience, a symphony of passion, pain, secrets, and seduction, wrapped into a mesmerizing tapestry of short tales that will leave you breathless. In this explosive anthology, Leigh explores the dark corners of human desire and the emotional infernos we try to hide from the world. Each story unlocks a hidden vault, a place where forbidden fantasies, haunting regrets, and untamed emotions collide. From toxic love to redemptive hope, from betrayal to the rawest kind of truth, these stories are as addictive as they are unforgettable. So, whether you're a longtime fan of KLeigh or discovering her for the first time, Inferno promises to ignite something deep inside. Are you ready to open the vault and face the fire within? Hit play and let the journey begin. Inferno Part 1. Part 1. Spark. From a small spark, great flame hath risen. Dante Alighieri. The Divine Comedy, Paradiso, Canto 1. Prologue. In Greek mythology, a person's destiny was supposedly ruled by three fates, or moirai, named Clotho, Lachesis, and Atropos. They controlled each mortal's thread from birth to death, ensuring each man's fate would follow its prescribed course without any interference. Centuries later, people still believe in this basic concept, that each person's destiny is predetermined, that there is no such thing as coincidence, that every event in a person's life was planned before they were even a blip on the ultrasound. For the first 28 years of my life, I'd insisted there was no such thing as fate, that most people used fate and the idea of a higher power, whether it be God or something else, to alleviate accountability for all life events, both bad and good, until I stepped foot on that Boeing 777 headed toward Rome. I'd viewed fate as something for the dreamers in life, not someone as practical and pragmatic as myself. I had no idea the next week would drastically change this outlook. Chapter 1. An overhead announcement snapped me out of my daydream. A man with a thick Italian accent indicating we were starting our initial descent into Fiumicino Airport. Glancing around the first-class cabin, I rubbed my clammy hands on my jeans, my heartbeat quickening as I felt the plane gradually leave the safety of the clouds in favor of the uncertainty of the ground. For the past 12 hours, I tried to forget what I'd done, wondering whether I made the right decision in flying halfway around the world so I'd be as far away as possible when the shit hit the proverbial fan. It was something entirely out of character for me, but I was tired of acting in accordance with everyone's expectations. A little more wine before we land. I glanced up at the lanky, somewhat flamboyant flight attendant standing in the aisle, a bottle of red wine in his hand. "Si, grazie," I responded, using the little Italian I knew. "Prego." I held out my glass and he filled it, not spilling a drop, despite the few bumps the plane encountered as it prepared to land. My eyes focused on the obscenely large engagement ring still sitting on the fourth finger of my left hand. I felt like a failure. As I was so often reminded, my father didn't raise failures. No doubt my parents had already made some excuse to Brock and his family for my absence from my own wedding, for having literally left him standing at the altar, waiting for a bride who'd already skipped town when she should have been walking down that aisle. It didn't matter that I was their daughter. They'd gladly throw me under the bus to remain in Brock's family's good graces. They wouldn't care that I'd walked in on him fucking another woman in the home we'd shared for the past 3 years, in the bedroom I'd decorated, on the bedding set that was an early wedding present from my grandparents. They'd turn it back on me, saying if I put more effort into making him happy, he wouldn't have felt the need to go elsewhere. Our marriage was simply a power play, merging two of the most predominant Republican families in California, the daughter of a longtime United States Senator to Brock Kennedy Harrison, a rising star in the California Republican Party and member of the House of Representatives, not to mention son of the current commissioner of the FDA. I began to wonder if the whole marriage was simply a way for Brock to increase his approval rating. I certainly wouldn't put it past him, or my parents. "We'll be landing in Roma in 30 minutes. The attendant's accented voice cut through my thoughts. I gave him a small smile and brought the wine to my lips, then looked out the window. The June sky clear with a few clouds. Below the plane was nothing but miles and miles of pristine ocean. Business or pleasure, a smooth voice asked over the dull roar of the engines. I remained in my own little dream world, imagining what it would be like to marvel at Michelangelo's masterpiece on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, to see the Trevi Fountain, to wander through the gardens at Villa Borghese. I said, "Business or pleasure?" That same voice asked once more, with more force this time. I turned my head, my gaze falling on a man I guessed to be in his late 30s sitting across the aisle, a cocky smirk on his face. His deep chestnut eyes narrowed on me as he raised his own glass of wine to his full lips, his thick hair matching the darkness in his gaze. Being the former fiancé of a man who took personal hygiene to the extreme, I had grown accustomed to his clean-shaven face, not one strand of hair out of place on his precisely groomed head. I thought I preferred it, but as my eyes raked over this complete stranger, his 5 o'clock shadow and slightly disheveled hair refreshingly sexy, my skin heated. "A bit of both," I answered, straightening my posture. Neither choice seemed an appropriate answer for why I decided to hop on a plane to Rome. There were plenty of other options. I could have booked a flight to Fiji, or the Maldives, or Vietnam, 3 destinations at the top of my list. Italy had never even been on my radar. Perhaps that was why I chose it. Thanks to my best friend's prodding and encouragement. Perhaps it was my subconscious telling me it was time to start over, to become the Ellie I always wanted to be before my parents had molded and groomed me into someone I didn't even recognize. "You?" I asked, wondering how I hadn't noticed this man until the 12-hour flight was nearly over. Then again, my mind had been a bit preoccupied. I'd boarded at the last possible minute, then proceeded to consume 2 glasses of champagne prior to takeoff. By the time the plane had hit its cruising altitude, enough alcohol flowed through my veins that the panic of what I'd done was momentarily forgotten. "Same." He leaned across the aisle. "I like to include a bit of pleasure in all I do," raising his eyebrows. He licked his lips. I inwardly groaned at his arrogance. If all Italians were like this, I had a feeling my trip would be very short. "Where is your fiancé?" His question caught me off guard. "What?" He gestured to my ring. "Why isn't he with you?" "Oh," I blinked repeatedly. "He's not my fiancé," I responded, flustered. "I thought I couldn't go through with the wedding." I interrupted. I didn't know why I felt compelled to explain myself, especially to a stranger, but I couldn't stop the words from rolling off my tongue. Instead of showing up at the church, I skipped town and ended up on this flight. I haven't been able to take the ring off just yet. Sorry to have brought him up. I gave him a terse smile, then faced forward, assuming our brief conversation was at an end. "If you ask me," he continued after a brief pause. I snapped my head to my right. "He's a fool for letting you slip out of his hands." I studied him with a furrowed brow. "What makes you say that?" "You don't even know me. I could have some weird habits no man in their right mind would be able to put up with, like not putting my clothes in the hamper or forgetting to run the dishwasher." I chewed on the inside of my cheek, recalling 2 heated arguments Brock and I had gotten into over those exact things. "I could be wrong," he said smoothly, "but I don't think that's the case. I've been known to be a pretty good judge of character." Based on just 2 minutes of conversation across the aisle of an airplane we've both been on for nearly 12 hours. I smirked, lightening my expression. I didn't know jet lag could produce such riveting dialogue. "You just said it yourself." A smug look crossed his face. He appeared to be surprisingly awake and composed, despite it being the end of a rather long flight. I briefly tore my gaze from him, surveying everyone else in the cabin. Eyes drooped. Travelers ran their hands over weary faces. Coffee was consumed as if we were on a lifeboat, and it was the only source of sustenance. Despite the comfort of flying in the first-class cabin with flatbed seats, nothing compared to a soft bed to stretch out in. Regardless, this man appeared refreshed, like he had just spent the night in the most luxurious bed known to man. I surmised he must travel often. "It's been a long flight," he continued. "You don't need to talk to someone to learn about them. I find it helps." He shrugged. "For some people, but not you." I lifted a brow, leering at him with slight disapproval. "In my line of work." "What is it you do exactly?" I interrupted. He studied me, his hooded eyes unnerving in the way they seemed to rake over every inch of me, piercing me. I'd been with Brock for 10 years. I'd never so much as fantasized about another man. Now that I didn't have my parents looking over my shoulder, telling me how to behave, I actually found myself peering into this man's mysterious eyes with intrigue and perhaps a bit of longing. "That's not important," he answered after much thought. "Suffice it to say, it's part of my profession to anticipate people's wants and needs, to be able to read them by just one look." I lowered my voice. "Are you a gigolo?" The combination of his words and rugged confidence left me no other option but to think that. His heated expression turned jovial and he chuckled. The lines around his eyes wrinkled with amusement. I couldn't remember the last time I had such an easy, unstilted conversation with another man, with Brock. Most of our discussions revolved around how the Democrats were ruining our country. I never got too involved. After one particularly tumultuous argument, I'd learned to simply keep my political opinions to myself. I had a feeling my father would disown me if he found out I had secretly campaigned for a Democrat in the last presidential election. No, definitely not a gigolo. His scruff voice cut through my memories. "But thank you for your vote of confidence, Miss." He paused, lifting his brows. "Eleanor, Ellie, Dante." Smiling, he held his hand toward me. I reached for it and he clasped his fingers around mine. His skin was rough, warm, inviting. They were the hands of a man, hands that didn't have a problem getting dirty, hands that didn't go for a spa manicure on a weekly basis. Dante turned my hand over and raised it to his mouth, planting a light kiss on it. "Piacere di conoscerti," he murmured against my skin. "Piacere di conoscerti," I offered in response, barely able to speak through the strange sensations flowing through me as I savored the feel of this stranger's lips on my flesh. The old Ellie would have ripped her hand away and berated him for acting so brazenly. But the point of this trip was to bid farewell to the old Ellie, for the past decade, perhaps even longer. I'd been a hostage in my own life. I refused to crawl back home, beg forgiveness, and try to piece my life back together. I'd made my decision and I intended to stand by it. I deserved a new start. Hopefully, Italy would give it to me. "Are you okay?" Eleanor Dante asked, noticing my bereft expression. Pulling my hand from his, I gave him a forced smile. "I'm fine." I stared straight ahead, the feel of his eyes on me burning my flesh, flustering me. He had this confidence and self-importance about him. Culture and custom taught us it wasn't polite to stare after you reached a certain age. Dante didn't appear to have paid attention during that lesson in his early years. As unnerving as the feeling of his eyes on me was, I found myself enjoying it. It was a welcome change to finally have the attention of a man, instead of simply being an afterthought, an arm piece to increase approval ratings. So, I cleared my throat. "If you claim to be such an expert on reading people without so much as having any sort of discussion, tell me what you think you know about me." He pinched his chin, his fervent gaze disarming. I couldn't help but feel he was able to strip away all the layers and see me for who I really was, even though I wasn't quite sure who that was myself. I raised my glass to my lips, swirling the wine around my mouth. "You're sheltered," he said after much thought. "You've been living in the shadows for so long. You're unsure of whether you're doing the right thing by breaking the chains that have kept you bound for years. And not the good kind of chains," he added with a lascivious wink. "You were scared to get on this plane back in Los Angeles, but you were even more scared to stay." He lifted a brow. My jaw grew slack at his astute assessment. I wondered if he'd been watching me since I arrived at the gate, nervously pacing, debating whether I should even board the plane. Am I right? I straightened my spine, as I always did to make it appear I wasn't intimidated. It often worked against my opponent in the courtroom or during negotiations. That couldn't be further from the truth. I responded in a strong voice, avoiding Dante's eyes. This man was a stranger, yet he saw me with more clarity than anyone else in my life ever had. How was that possible? Chapter 2. Iraqed my fingers through thick, dark hair. my mind a complete blank as I reveled in the toe-curling sensation of this breathtaking, mysterious man moving on top of me with such expertise, as if his body was made for the sole purpose of bringing me unmatched pleasure. I had no idea what transpired that led us to sharing a bed. Hell, I could barely even remember getting into the chauffeured car I'd arranged to bring me to my luxury hotel high atop a hill overlooking the Vatican and St. Peter's Basilica. The entire day was a blur, except for the electric current flooding my veins from the feel of Dante's hands in my hands, his skin on my skin, his lips bruising my lips. I wrapped my legs tighter around his waist, wanting to feel everything. I needed it harder, deeper, fuller. This was precisely how I'd imagined sex was supposed to be. It was spontaneous, it was passionate, it was wild. Sweat formed on my brow as my motions became more hurried, the edge within sight. I closed my eyes, tuning out everything except what I was feeling. And for the first time since I could remember, I felt bliss, comfort, ease, happiness, everything that had evaded me for years as I tried to be the perfect daughter, the perfect girlfriend, the perfect lawyer. I bid farewell to that woman the second I stepped foot on that Boeing 777. All the worry and trepidation I'd made the wrong decision disappeared as I relished in the feel of a stranger giving me everything I never knew I always craved. Don't fight it, amore mio. His husky voice groaned through heavy breaths. I dug my nails into the skin of his muscular back just as he nibbled on my earlobe, setting me off. Dante, I screamed. Waves of ecstasy enveloped me, making me shake and writhe. I opened my eyes, expecting to stare into deep pools of lust and desire. My breath hitched, confusion flooding through me when I was met with an empty bed. Frozen. I took account of everything. It was a dream, I murmured, trying to slow my racing heart. I'd never had a sex dream before. It felt so real, right down to the tingly sensation still rolling over my body. I had an orgasm because of a dream about a man I barely knew who I'd never see again. I briefly closed my eyes, taking a minute to collect my thoughts and try to return to reality. When I reopened them, I checked my watch. It was about 10 in the morning in Los Angeles, which meant it was 7 in the evening in Rome. I stretched, unsure how I could still be as tired as I felt, my mind still cloudy about how I'd gotten from the airport to my hotel. As my brain slowly became more alert, the events of earlier trickled back. After the plane landed, I'd made my way through customs, inwardly hoping to run into my new acquaintance, but I hadn't. I shouldn't have cared, shouldn't have even been seeking him out, but there was something about him that intrigued me. During the 30-minute ride to the hotel, I couldn't stop thinking about what he'd said to me, how he seemed to know me better than my parents and even the person I was supposed to marry. Sitting up in one of the most comfortable beds imaginable, I flung my legs over the side and switched on a lamp. I looked down, noticing I was only wearing my bra and panties. The rest of my clothes were strewn on the floor. Seeing them brought a smile to my face. It was such a small thing, but I never would have been able to leave them so haphazardly if Brock were here with me. He would have demanded I fold them neatly and put them in one of the dresser drawers. He had been a stickler for order and neatness. I supposed I was, too, but in a different way. I was organized without being obsessive about it. Brock turned being tidy into an Olympic event. Enough, Ellie, I said, giving myself a pep talk. That part of your life is over. I padded across the floor, stepping around the room service cart left over from the lunch I'd ordered before succumbing to jet lag. Pulling on a robe containing the hotel's insignia, I drew open the curtains in front of the large sliding glass doors. I was instantly caught breathless at the view. I opened the door and emerged onto the balcony of my 8th floor room. Inhaling, the smell of flowers in bloom invaded my senses. The temperature was warm with a bit more humidity than I was accustomed to living in Southern California. The sun was beginning to set, the sky an orange hue. I leaned on the railing, gazing at the spectacular view of St. Peter's Basilica, the sun reflecting off the dome. I released a long, contented sigh, in total awe of my surroundings, the history, the beauty, the art. It hadn't struck me until this moment. I was in Rome. Rome, birthplace of amazing artists, musicians, thinkers, home of the Sistine Chapel, the Colosseum, the Spanish Steps. I felt like I was worlds away, like I was watching a movie of someone else's life. Perhaps that was all I had been doing the past 28 years. Maybe I'd simply been watching someone else's story. Maybe today was the day my story finally began. It took being free of all those restraints to see how sheltered I'd allowed myself to be. I'd always thought I was a strong, independent woman, and I supposed I was, to an extent. I had no problem standing up to my opponent across the aisle of the courtroom or in a negotiation. But when it came to my personal life, I'd never pushed the boundaries that had been constructed for me since the day I was born. Never again. Glancing down at my hands, the diamond on my ring finger seemed so out of place now. It felt like it weighed hundreds of pounds instead of a few ounces. Resolved. I slid the inordinate ring off my hand for the first time in years. A burden instantly lifting. I formed a fist around it, squeezing it with every bit of strength I possessed. I didn't care about this ring anymore. Everything I thought it symbolized had been proven to be fake. Reeling back, I chucked it as far as I could, catching a glimpse of the sunlight hitting the stone as it disappeared into a bunch of trees and shrubbery. Feeling infinitely lighter, I retreated into my hotel room, wanting to wash the past few days off me, then go experience Rome at night. Opening my suitcase, I went about unpacking all my clothes. I studied the items I'd brought with me, scowling, 3-inch heels, pencil skirts, silk blouses, not much suitable for sightseeing and walking around town. I'd been so used to accompanying Brock on trips for his work. I must have been on autopilot when I packed this bag, taking the clothes he'd expect me to wear when meeting with potential donors, constituents, and fellow congressmen. I had a feeling a shopping trip was scheduled in the very near future. Pulling my toiletry bag out of my suitcase, I carried it into the exquisite bathroom. I set it on the marble counter, then headed toward the oversized spa tub, turning on the water and jets. As it filled, I went about organizing my things. When I finished, my eyes fell on my cell phone at the bottom of my bag. I'd powered it down before the plane took off and hadn't switched it back on, not wanting to be inundated with all the messages and texts from everyone probably trying to reach me, my mom, my dad, Brock. Part of me wanted to keep it turned off until I landed back on American soil. But it wasn't an option. Mila had stuck her neck out for me. At the very least, I needed to assure her I'd landed safely and was still alive. Turning off the water, I stepped into the bath, leaning my head back against the ceramic. I released a long sigh, the warmth of the water relieving all the tension in my body. I reached for my cell and powered it on. After a few seconds, my home screen appeared. As I suspected, dozens of texts and voicemail alerts popped up. Many were from Brock, probably throwing a tantrum of epic proportions. But there were also quite a few from his parents, my parents, and even one from the senior partner at the law firm. The only one who hadn't reached out to me was Mila. She had no reason to. She knew exactly where I was. I opened the contacts on my phone and called her, listening as the line rang. I wondered how big of a shitstorm she had to deal with over the past 18 hours. Ellie, she answered on the second ring. There you are. Her voice was relieved, maybe even happy. Mila, I breathed. It felt so good to hear her voice. How is it? What Italy? Of course. Italy. What else would I be talking about? What have you been doing? See anything old yet? This whole city is old. I laughed, the familiarity of joking with one of my dearest friends comforting me in a world that seemed to be turned upside down in a matter of hours. I landed around 11 this morning, but after customs and all that, I didn't get to the hotel until after 1. I ate lunch, then passed out from exhaustion. Now I'm having a nice soak in the tub before heading out. I exhaled a long breath. Mila, I can see St. Peter's Basilica from my room. It's just, I shook my head. I didn't even have words. I know, Ellie, remarkable, isn't it? It's exactly what I needed. I'm still not sure how you knew this was the perfect place for me. Because it came to me in a vision. I rolled my eyes. Most of my acquaintances didn't understand my friendship with Mila, including my parents and Brock. They didn't exactly approve of her, mainly because she didn't come from a wealthy or powerful family. We'd met during 6th grade when my father was trying to appear more relatable and sent me to public school for the first time. It was the best thing that ever happened to me. Although I didn't think so at the time, Mila had just moved to town. Being the 2 new kids at school, we'd formed a bond. Over the years, that bond strengthened. You deserve this after everything you've been through the past few years with Brock the cock. Her voice cut through. Speaking of which, I swallowed hard, my hands trembling slightly. How was the fallout? There was a brief pause. Just as we suspected it would be, for the most part. For the most part. What do you mean? It's hard to explain, she replied thoughtfully. It all went as you asked. I told everyone you didn't want to be disturbed while you got ready. Miraculously, they all bought it. I could picture her rolling her eyes. When you didn't appear for the processional, I went to supposedly check on you. And when Brock learned you'd stood him up, I thought he'd be angry, but he wasn't. Well, he probably realized he shouldn't have fucked his secretary 2 days before we were to be married. I shot back. I don't know. Ellie. Her voice was filled with unease. If I didn't know how he is, I'd probably be inclined to agree. But something was off. He had this kind of strange look on his face. It was borderline creepy. Sinister, maybe? I don't know. It rubbed me the wrong way. Brock's always rubbed you the wrong way, I reminded her. And I was right about everything, wasn't I? If you want to say I told you so, go on and say it, Mila. People say that shit when they take pride in it. I can't do that here. Her voice lowered. My being right means my best friend is hurting. I really didn't want to be right this time. It's okay, I assured her with a heavy sigh. I'm okay. It felt strange to say those words. You'd think, after walking away from the only life I'd ever known, there would be some regret, some remorse, some fear. Perhaps there was at first, but now that I was here, in Italy, I didn't feel any of those things. Maybe I would when I finally returned home to whatever pieces of my life were left, but I didn't right now. That was all that mattered. So, what's first on Ellie's freedom tour of Italy? Mila's voice turned playful once more. I propped my leg on the ceramic of the tub, sinking against the jets massaging my back. At this moment, I would have been content to stay in this position the length of my time here. I'll probably go find something to eat, then maybe see the Trevi Fountain at night. I hear it's supposed to be gorgeous. Just be careful, and promise me you'll have a little fun while you're there. I am having fun, I insisted. An evening out touring some old ruins sounds like a raging good time. She scoffed. Darling, you're 28. That douche Cano stole most of your 20s, and your parents stole your younger years. You're finally free from all that. Live a little. Find some really hot Italian guy and have some really hot Italian sex. I swallowed hard, remaining silent as the dream came rushing back. The memories of Dante's mysterious and erotic eyes making my skin flame, my fingers aching to reach out and run through his disheveled hair. Ellie, you still there? Yeah, sorry. I shook it off, my voice becoming firm once more. I don't think hot Italian sex will help anything. You're the one who told me you wanted to erase Brock Kennedy Harrison from your life. You deserve to have some fun, and that includes between the sheets. I don't need to sleep with someone to have fun. I insisted. Although my words lacked any conviction, I fantasized about what Dante would do to me if he were in this very bathtub. I tried to shove those inappropriate thoughts below, where they belonged. After everything that asshole put you through, I think you do. Ellie, you need to open your eyes and see that nothing about Brock was normal. That most men make sure their partner feels just as good as they do. They don't use their girl's vagina to get off, then immediately leave to take a shower. He liked being clean. He's always had this thing with germs. You need to find a man who will go down on you, who will give you a fucking orgasm. How you've described sex with him doesn't qualify. He was pretty much just using you to masturbate. There needs to be some sort of mutual consideration in intimacy. That may be true, I conceded, but I'm only here for 10 days. I doubt that's enough time to meet someone, then ask him to screw me. I could just imagine the smile on her face at the thought I was considering her idea. Mila was a very open woman. I'd listened to her stories about the guys she'd dated. After sleeping with Brock the first time, I couldn't help but think Mila had grossly embellished the stories about her own bedroom escapades. I didn't exactly grow up with affectionate parents. I couldn't recall them ever kissing each other, or even passing a loving touch. The only contact I'd ever seen between them was at public events where they would hold hands, which was probably more for higher approval ratings than because they actually cared about each other. When Brock and I began dating, I never felt anything was lacking from our relationship. I thought the fairy tale version of romance was simply that, a fairy tale. But as more and more of my friends fell in love and got married, Mila included, I wondered if maybe I had it all wrong. Maybe there was such a thing as a fairy tale. Head over heels, can't eat, can't sleep, can't breathe love. You'll be surprised what can happen in just 10 days, Ellie. Chapter 3. Later that evening, my cab came to a stop in front of a restaurant the concierge at the hotel had recommended, a place named Inferno. I nearly choked, instantly reminded of Dante once more. It was like the universe didn't want me to forget him. A valet attendant strode toward the car, opening the door. I stepped onto the cobblestone sidewalk, staring at the facade, the architecture in that typical Roman style, cream stone, magnificent arched windows and doorways, exquisite columns by the entrance. Heading toward the mirrored glass doors, I stopped in my tracks, the reflection looking back momentarily taking me by surprise. Instead of caking on layers of makeup, I wore just a hint of blush and powder on my face, a thin line of pencil around my eyes bringing out the hazel shade. For the first time I could remember, I hadn't gone through the laborious process of straightening my blonde hair. Instead, I'd allowed the waves to cascade to my mid-back. As I surveyed my new attire, courtesy of a charming boutique in the lobby of my hotel, skinny jeans and an off-the-shoulder flowing white tunic top, coupled with a pair of wedge sandals that added about 2 more inches to my 5', 6-inch height, I struggled to control the smile spreading across my face. I never would have been able to go out in public looking like this before. I no longer had anyone to tell me how to style my hair, how to apply my makeup, what clothes to wear. The world was at my fingertips, and I was going to enjoy the opportunity for however long it lasted. My stomach growled from the smell of garlic making its way to my senses, even on the sidewalk, and I tore my eyes from my reflection. I opened the door and stepped inside, the aroma instantly growing stronger as I glanced around the darkened restaurant. To the left of the host stand was a large dining area with booths and tables. The decor was understated elegance, white tablecloths, wrought iron chandeliers, antique light fixtures on the walls. The noise level was relatively low, even given the number of diners present, making it easy to hold a quiet conversation. "Welcome to Inferno," a brunette greeted, bringing my attention back to the host stand. "How did you know I spoke English?" "Casualty of the job," she answered with a slight accent. "Do you have a reservation?" I was hoping to get something to eat at the bar, if that's not a problem." "Of course not." She gestured toward the large lounge area that was reminiscent of some of the wine cellars I'd toured during my few trips to Napa Valley with Brock. The counter of the bar appeared to be poured cement, stacks upon stacks of wooden slats, which held a rather impressive collection of wine, disappeared into the ceiling. I thanked her, then headed toward the bar. I found an empty chair toward the end and hoisted myself onto it. The lighting was even lower in here than in the dining room. It added to the mystery of the place. Once I hung my clutch onto the hook below the bar, a man in a dark button-down shirt approached, placing a cocktail napkin in front of me. "Buonasera, signorina." "Hi," I responded, English. He cocked a brow. I wondered if everyone in this country had dark hair and even darker eyes. I'd yet to come across a single unattractive Italian man. I doubted there were such a thing. "Sigh," I answered, my eyes apologetic. "It's all right. I grew up speaking both Italian and English. I wish I could speak it better. The extent of my Italian is dove il bagno. I shrugged. Well, that is probably the most important one to know. But rest assured, while you're in Roma, you'll be fine. He flashed a dazzling smile. Now, what can I get you to drink? A really good glass of wine. I'll get you the list. That's not necessary. I trust your judgment. I'm an American in Italy for the first time. Pour me a glass of something you think would be a crime to leave without tasting. Red or white? I smirked. Is that even a question, Red? Ah, a woman after my own heart. He jested, placing his hands over his chest. I'll pour you a red that may just change your life. He winked, then retreated. Within moments, he reappeared, opening a bottle. This is from the Barolo region. And where is that? North. He put a pristine glass in front of me and poured a small amount of a deep red wine into it. It's a medium-bodied wine, probably closest to what you know as a Pinot Noir, a bit velvety with a spicy finish. I held the glass by the stem and swirled it on the bar, looking at the legs that formed. I brought it to my nose and sniffed, then took a sip. He was right. It was similar to the Pinots I'd been exposed to, but this was different. It was richer, creamier, spicier. It's perfect. Pour away. I placed my glass back on the bar, sliding it toward him. See, signorina. He proceeded to fill my glass. Will you be joining us for dinner as well? Yes, please. Certamente. He produced a menu drawn on heavy stock paper and placed it in front of me. Take your time and let me know if you have any questions at all. Grazie. I smiled, then turned my attention to the menu. To my luck, it was written in both Italian and English. Feeling at ease for the first time in ages, I sat back in my chair, taking another sip of wine. In no rush for my first night of freedom to end, I glanced around the bar and restaurant, absorbing the atmosphere. Based on the number of couples here, I assumed this was probably one of the premier spots for a romantic dinner for two. The ambiance certainly exuded romance. Dim lighting, high, arched ceilings, tea candles in a small votive on the center of each table, a wine list that was probably longer than my college thesis, traditional Italian cuisine prepared with a modern flair. When I'd boarded my flight, I didn't know how I'd react to being in a city where you could physically feel the romance. I feared being surrounded by the art, the fountains, and the wine would make me second-guess my decision to leave Brock and the only life I'd ever known. Instead, as a warmth filtered through my body, I felt not a single ounce of regret at the notion that I'd just tossed away everything I was raised to believe was important. I felt something I didn't even know I was looking for. I felt freedom. Mila knew exactly what she was doing when she helped concoct my final, humiliating farewell to Brock. She knew I needed this trip, that I needed to be somewhere far away so I could finally rid myself of the chains my parents had carefully shackled around me my entire life. That if I didn't get on the plane, I may have lost my nerve and ended up marrying him anyway. That this was my chance to finally figure out who I was as a person. The embarrassment Brock was forced to endure as the result of my absence was simply the icing on the cake. Another wine? Signorina, the handsome bartender asked. I snapped my eyes to his before looking down, surprised to see an empty glass in front of me. See, it felt oddly satisfying to be able to say yes to a second glass of wine. It was one of those things most people took for granted, but being the girlfriend, then fiancée of a man with great political aspirations, public perception was everything. Too bad it took nearly a decade for me to realize it was just another way he and the rest of my family controlled my behavior. With a smile, the bartender refilled my glass. Just then, a waiter appeared behind the bar and placed a small plate in front of me. I haven't ordered anything yet. The bartender's smile grew wider. Compliments of the chef. Grilled octopus with olives and peppers. Buon appetito. Cautiously studying him, I placed my napkin in my lap, turning my eyes to the small white plate in front of me. The octopus had been sliced into bite-sized pieces, then arranged in a beautiful presentation over what appeared to be a reduction with olives and peppers. I'd never had octopus before. Never would have ordered something like this if Brock were here. He was a meat and potatoes kind of guy, through and through. He didn't like to try anything new or exciting. Somewhere along the way, I'd become content with the ordinary and commonplace, too. Taking my fork in my hand, I stabbed one of the pieces and brought it to my mouth. If I didn't learn anything else about myself during this trip, at least I realized I liked octopus. As the evening wore on and the wine flowed a bit too freely, more and more dishes appeared in front of me, all of them compliments of the chef. If the alcohol hadn't relaxed me as much as it did, I probably would have questioned it. How could anyone turn away a pear and blue cheese salad, or a short rib ravioli with a truffle cream sauce? The food was truly remarkable. The way the flavors melded together and danced on my tongue satisfied me in a way no food ever had. Or perhaps everything tasted better knowing there was no one looking over my shoulder telling me I should be watching my waistline, just when I didn't think I could eat another bite. The bartender appeared with a small bowl and placed it in front of me. Let me guess. Compliments of the chef. I raised a brow. You are quite perceptive, he winked. Our house gelato? I shook my head, patting my belly. I'm not sure I can fit anything else in my stomach. Just one little taste, a deep, accented voice said, startling me. I shot my eyes toward a darkened corner of the bar. A tall physique pushed off the wall and out of the shadows. All the oxygen was ripped from my lungs as I watched the same mysterious stranger from the plains saunter toward me. The same man I couldn't stop thinking about. The same man I'd fantasized about earlier. How I stammered, my stomach fluttering. I mean, what are you doing here? It is quite the coincidence our paths have crossed again. Some might say it's a sign, he said smoothly, then turned his attention to the bartender. They had a brief conversation in Italian before the bartender retreated with a nod. I gaped at Dante, trying to ward off the blush growing on my face as I stared at a living, breathing reminder of my lewd dream in which he had a starring role. Who was this man? Why did I keep running into him? Why did I feel as if I should know him? Your gelato is getting warm, he declared, his voice even. You really should try some. It's quite... He leaned closer, decadent. His breath danced on my skin, subconsciously. I lifted my chin slightly, exposing my neck to him. My tongue darted out, moistening my lips, as I reached for the spoon. Good girl, he responded slyly, helping himself to the vacant chair beside me. I couldn't quite explain it, but those two words forced a strange reaction inside me. My stomach soared, my skin heated, my muscles clenched, keeping my eyes trained on him. I dug the spoon into the creamy treat and raised it to my lips. I took a bite, then leisurely slid the spoon out of my mouth, moaning as the heavenly taste of chocolate hit my tongue. He was right. It was quite decadent, sinful, divine. This wasn't the first time I'd tasted gelato, but that stuff they peddled back in the States with the label of gelato was nothing compared to this blissful treat. Told you it was good, he murmured, the warmth of his body so close to mine forcing my heart to beat just a little bit faster, my lungs to breathe a little bit heavier, those butterflies in my stomach to flap their wings a little bit quicker. I'd never met someone so bold, so mysterious, so provocative. At first, I'd been turned off by his confident and self-assured demeanor. Now, I found myself captivated by it. Perhaps Mila's admonition that I needed to find a hot Italian guy made me view Dante in a different light. Perhaps it was because he was everything Brock wasn't. Perhaps his confidence wasn't a bad thing. Perhaps he was a little like me. He saw what he wanted and went after it. At least that was how I carried myself in my professional life. I wished I had the courage to do the same in my personal life. I'm not so sure I'd simply call this good, I responded, pretending to be unaffected by him. Good seems far too inadequate a word to describe this. My voice was low, sensual, flirtatious. Is that right? He cocked a brow, leaning toward me, his eyes narrowing. And how would the lovely Eleanor describe the gelato? My eyes became intense, bold, cunning. I wanted to give off the appearance that I, too, had confidence in spades, something much more accurate than simply good. My flight was good. The bath I took this evening was good. The cab ride to this restaurant was good. This gelato is wicked. It's sinful. It's libidinous. The corner of his mouth turned into a slight smile. Libidinous. He licked his lips. Yes, libidinous, I repeated in a throaty voice. I had no idea what had come over me. It was probably the bottle of wine I'd consumed. The old Ellie would have never spoken to anyone in such a provocative manner. She never would have flirted in the first place. The new Ellie wanted to flirt. She wanted to feel desired, sexy, wanted. I knew absolutely nothing about Dante, yet he made me feel more alluring in the span of 5 minutes than Brock had in the past decade. I know what it means, Dante interrupted. If I'm not mistaken, it means full of lust. Your English is quite good. I leaned back, breaking the growing tension between us as I crossed my arms in front of my chest. I spend a fair bit of time in the States, he explained. Mi dispiace. Signor Luciano, the bartender interrupted, somewhat out of breath. He hurried toward us from behind the bar, offering a smile. This bottle was difficult to find. Va bene, he responded dismissively, holding his hand toward the bartender. To my surprise, he gave Dante the bottle. I eyed him with curiosity as he pulled a corkscrew out of the inside pocket of his dark suit jacket and went about opening the bottle. That wouldn't have been allowed back home. Perhaps the rules were different here. Dante made quick work of the cork and poured the red wine into 2 glasses the bartender had left on the counter. Considering my head already felt a little fuzzy, I probably shouldn't have any more alcohol, but I reached for the glass anyway. It's a Sangiovese, he said when I raised it to my lips. It was a bold red with hints of chocolate. From my vineyard. I gave him a sideways glance, placing my glass back on the bar. Your vineyard. You made this. He chuckled slightly. Not exactly. Compared to seasoned winemakers, my knowledge of viticulture is somewhat limited. Thankfully, I have some of the best winemakers in the industry working for me. Why have a vineyard if you're not interested in making wine? He studied me in an unnerving manner, looking at me as if I'd just asked a ridiculous question, as if the answer should have been obvious. Let's just say I like to diversify my investments, he said finally. And a vineyard is an investment. It certainly can be. He brought his glass to his lips. We Italians tend to enjoy our wine. I imitated his gesture, the wine warming my stomach, almost as much as we enjoy our women. I coughed, his words catching me by surprise. Dante quickly summoned the bartender to pour me a glass of water. One appeared in front of me almost instantly. Sorry, I apologized after I took a large gulp. It went down the wrong pipe. It's completely understandable. I drank more water, then inhaled a long breath, unnerved by the wanton and shameless way his stare raked over every inch of my body. He made no attempt to hide the ravenous hunger in his gaze. Tell me, Dante? I cleared my throat, fidgeting with the bottom of my tunic. What is it you do for a living? You're adorable after you've had a few drinks, he remarked. Has anyone ever told you that? He took another sip of his wine. I'd never been so jealous of a wine glass in my life. I looked at him, my jaw slack. You're avoiding my question. Not avoiding at all. Eleanor. My mother taught me to always let a woman know she's beautiful. And you certainly are beautiful. He reached out and brushed aside a strand of hair that had fallen in front of my eyes. I like this new look for you. His fingers lingered on my hair for a beat. Then he glanced at my hand. When he noticed the 4th finger now sat bare, he smiled. It's more natural, more fitting, more relaxed. I feel more relaxed. I responded, unable to shake the feeling we weren't talking about my hair, but the lack of a ring. Like the weight of the world has been lifted off my shoulders. Like I can finally... I drew in a deep breath. Yes, he shortened the gap between us, his fingers still toying with my subtle waves. Lost in the proximity of his body to mine, I tuned out everything else. The background noises, the other diners surrounding us, the fact that I'd never see this man again after tonight. Like I can finally... I licked my lips. Yes, he repeated, cupping my cheek. Live. I exhaled, leaning toward him, my motions no longer of my own volition. I'd given complete control over to an unknown force. Closing my eyes, my body edged closer and closer to Dante's, my lips ghosting against his. A shiver trickled down my spine, the hairs on my nape standing on end. I couldn't explain what had come over me, but I wanted to know how Dante's lips tasted. I imagined he kissed with certainty, with passion, with an eagerness I'd never experienced in all my 28 years. When our lips were a whisper away, the sound of a few dishes clattering together startled me, and I abruptly pulled away. My face burned with embarrassment as I straightened my spine. Turning from Dante, he glared at the source, the busboy offering apologies left and right. I should probably get the check. Smoothing my hands over my jeans, I adjusted my composure and pushed my wine glass away. I didn't think drinking anymore was a good idea. I'd almost kissed a man I'd just met, in public, where dozens of people could see. It's almost 11, and I still want to stop by the Trevi fountain. Well then, let's go. He stood and held his hand out toward me. With you, I gave him a skeptical look. Who else? I'm sure you want to get on with your evening, as well. I insisted, and I still have to pay. Did you not hear he gave me a sly grin? It was all compliments of the chef. Opening my mouth, I paused, allowing his words to sink in. Compliments of the chef. Realization washed over me. That was you. Technically, I'm not the chef here. I just own this restaurant, although every single one of the dishes you had were some of my specialties. Smirking, I shook my head. It's fitting. Isn't it Dante's Inferno? How original, I mocked playfully. I think it has a nice ring to it. With a piercing gaze, he gradually erased the distance between us. A voice in my head shouted that I should back away, that I should leave the restaurant and forget I'd ever met him. Instead, my body remained firmly locked in place, eagerly anticipating the next sensual thing this man would do or say. I do like to bring the heat. He lingered for a moment before pulling back, a chill washing over me from his absence. Pressing my lips into a fine line, I eyed him with curiosity. Are you just being nice because you feel bad for me after what I told you on the plane? I couldn't help but think there had to be a reason he was acting this way, that he must have some ulterior motive. If that's the case, I don't need your pity. I don't feel bad for you at all. Eleanor, he said nonchalantly, then why did you send all the food and wine my way? And you can just call me Ellie. That's what everyone else calls me. Let's just say I believe in fate, and I don't want to call you what everyone else does. Eleanor, he added, almost as an afterthought. Fate, I scoffed. Are you serious? You don't believe in fate. I shook my head. Not since I became an adult. Why not? Because it's ridiculous. It's something people who don't want to take any responsibility for their own actions believe in. I believe in accountability. So you don't think there was some outside force that landed you in the seat across the aisle from me on that plane? Then again, in my restaurant, when there are hundreds, if not thousands of restaurants here in Rome, I don't think it was anything other than a coincidence. I wanted to see the Trevi fountain at night. It's just your luck you have a restaurant a few blocks from there. He shot me a sly glance, his voice a husky whisper. You honestly don't believe there was a reason for these two chance meetings, as if the universe is trying to tell us something. I opened my mouth, trying to formulate one of my typical responses, that the idea of some mystical power pulling the strings, orchestrating each person's destiny, was completely absurd. People believed in the existence of fate because they needed to think there was a hidden meaning in every encounter when they should simply view it for what it was. A random occurrence, nothing more, thing. But the way he gazed at me, a heady look in his eyes, coupled with the warmth of his body, made me want to consider that he may be onto something. I murmured finally, my voice heavy with indecision. Dante's expression fell. Pity. He stepped back. I, for one, do believe in fate, in destiny, and I tend to believe it was fate that brought us together not once, but twice in the past 24 hours. And what would this so-called fate's reason be for doing so? If we knew, I think fate would be out of a job. Now, he relaxed his posture, holding his hand toward me once more. I believe the Trevi fountain is waiting for us, and it is breathtaking at night. Unable to refuse him, I placed my hand in his and watched with a furtive stare as he feathered a soft kiss on my knuckles, his thumb subtly caressing the ghost of my engagement ring. I shuddered at the thought that had I not walked in on Brock and his secretary in a compromising position, there would most likely be a wedding band there, too. Maybe Dante was right. Maybe there was such a thing as fate. Maybe the universe had finally decided to do something in my favor for once. Maybe there was a reason our paths had crossed. Chapter 4. There was a spiciness in the air as I stepped onto the cobblestone sidewalk, Dante at my side. I inhaled a deep breath, trying to calm my overwrought nerves. The temperature had dropped, making me wish I'd brought a light jacket with me. I rubbed my arms slightly. Dante chuckled. Let me guess. You've never lived in a cold climate. He glanced at me. Southern California, born and raised. It's probably 20 degrees, yet you're cold. I furrowed a brow. 20 degrees. My eyes widened as understanding fell over me. Oh, you're talking Celsius. See, Eleanor, welcome to Europe, or the rest of the world, for that matter. He shrugged out of his suit jacket and draped it around my shoulders. It was such a simple gesture, but one that spoke volumes. Brock never offered me his jacket when I was chilly. He'd simply admonish me for not dressing appropriately. The more time I spent away from him, the more I questioned how I could have stayed with him as long as I did. My parents' wishes be damned. This way. It's only a few blocks. His hands fell off my shoulders as he led me from his restaurant and down a narrow street made up entirely of brick and cobblestone. Even the sidewalks in this city were beautiful. So, what made you decide to come to Rome to escape your wedding? He asked, his fingers subtly brushing against my hand. It's all kind of a blur. In all honesty, coming here had never even been on my radar. I answered, staring into the distance, not really seeing anything. I couldn't be anywhere near home when the shit hit the fan, so to speak. I looked at a list of all the international flights going out of LAX, which were quite a lot. My friend, Mila, insisted I go to Rome, saying it came to her in a vision. I rolled my eyes. Maybe it is fate, after all. He cocked a brow at me. I don't think so. Mila's always been a bit flighty. She asks complete strangers if she can read their palms. Rome was someplace the old Ellie never would have chosen. This trip is all about figuring out who I really am. So we're on a soul-seeking mission, are we? I suppose. I tugged his jacket tighter around me. I wasn't cold. There was just something about the warmth of his clothes on my skin that comforted me. Well, Eleanor from Southern California, I do hope you find exactly what you're looking for here in the Eternal City. I gave him a sideways glance, my eyes lingering on his for a protracted moment before I faced forward once again. A brief silence passed between us as we continued walking. And you, I asked finally, why is Rome home for you? I looked at the curvature of his face. He had a classic silhouette, chiseled jawline, refined nose, strong cheekbones, full lips. I'm not so sure Rome is home for me, he answered after much thought. I tend to travel quite a bit in my line of work. I sometimes feel more at home in a hotel room than anywhere else. He narrowed his gaze on me. Part of me thinks you can understand. His observation caught me by surprise, and I came to a stop. The alcohol coursing through my veins made me want to tell him everything that had led me to this point. How I'd spent my life pretending to be someone I wasn't. How my parents most likely only had me because my dad thought having kids would increase his approval ratings. How they set up my first date with Brock and wouldn't take no for an answer. How I'd never been able to make a decision of my own in my personal life. That was probably why I'd excelled so well at the law firm. I'd been given a modicum of control to handle my clients as I saw fit. No one told me what strategy to use, how to write my motions and briefs, which cases to settle, which cases to take to trial. While the partners did have some say, after seeing my performance record, they gave me wide discretion, something I'd never had before. Come! Dante urged me forward when I remained stunned and mute. We're almost there. I blinked, snapping it out of my thoughts, and caught up to his long strides. We rounded a corner, the magnificent fountain coming into view. I exhaled a long, satisfied breath, overwhelmed by the beauty and majesty before me. It was truly a sight to behold. The white stone of the sculptures almost glowing against the pool of water in front of them. The backdrop was even more impressive, a central arch framing the sculptures, a coat of arms looming at the top of the 3-story building. I'd seen this fountain in photos and in the movies. Nothing could properly do it justice. Dante placed his hand on the small of my back, steering us through the crowd. We weren't the only ones who'd come to see the grandeur of this fountain at night. The area was inundated with tourists, many of them posing for photos and throwing coins into the water. As we made our way closer, people seemed to gape at my companion, almost in surprise and excitement. Some even snapped his photo. I wrinkled my brow, scowling slightly. When I started to ask why people were taking his picture, he cut me off. "Do you know where the name Trevi Fountain is derived from?" "No," I answered in a drawn-out voice, my eyes glued to him as he pretended to be blissfully unaware of everyone staring at him. In early Roman times, this fountain was built as the endpoint of the Aqua Virgo Aqueduct. This is the junction of 3 roads, which is how it got its name. Trevi means 3 roads. "I'm glad I ran into you," I remarked, my tone light. Not only did I get a free meal out of it, but now I have my own personal tour guide. "I'm quite pleased you ran into me as well," he responded, winking. His hand found mine and he pulled me to the edge of the fountain. While it was probably just as impressive during the day, there was something haunting and romantic about this place at night. The white stone brilliant against the dark sky. Leaning closer, I observed hundreds, perhaps thousands of coins sprinkled on the bottom of the pool of water in front of the beautiful sculptures. "It's like a giant piggy bank." "The legend of the fountain," Dante explained. "If you throw a coin from your right hand over your left shoulder and into the fountain, it's said to ensure a return trip to Rome." "Is that so?" I glanced around, observing several people doing precisely that. "That's so..." I began to reach for my purse when Dante stopped me, holding out his hand, revealing 3 coins. 3 coins, I raised a brow. "Legend also says to throw in 2 coins if you're seeking love, 3 if you're hoping for wedding bells." He inched toward me, his dark eyes narrowed. "So what'll it be, Eleanor? 1, 2, or 3 coins?" I kept my gaze locked on his. I'd always hated when people used my full name. I never liked it much and had gone by Ellie most of my life. Something about the way it rolled off Dante's tongue excited me. He made it sound sexy, charming, vivacious. I had a feeling even the most mundane and boring words would have a completely different life when spoken in his provocative tone. "Just 1, not looking for love. After ditching my ex-fiancé at the altar, love is the last thing I need in my life right now." "Ah, but we sometimes find it when we least expect it." He placed a single 50-cent euro coin in my right hand. I studied him for a protracted moment, wondering if there was a hidden meaning to his words, but I quickly shook it off. He was probably just being friendly. Turning around so my back was to the fountain, I threw the coin over my left shoulder and into the pool of water. Dante smirked at me when I faced him once more. "What?" "Nothing." He shrugged, his smirk growing. "What is it? Do I have food in my teeth or something?" "No, you're just a bit of an enigma, Eleanor, that's all." "How do you mean?" He licked his lips. "You refuse to acknowledge the existence of fate or destiny, yet you'll throw a coin into a centuries-old fountain in accordance with an arcane legend." Emboldened by my surroundings, I pinched my lips together, raising myself onto my toes. Closing the distance, I inhaled, catching a whiff of his aroma. It wasn't an overpowering scent. Basil, mint, maybe even a hint of licorice. It was a heady combination that intoxicated me in a way no wine ever had. "You know what they say, don't you, Dante?" I whispered in a coy voice, blocking out everything else: the running water, the chatter of tourists, the buzz of scooters speeding down the nearby streets. His hand palmed my lower back, forcing me against him. This all felt incredibly surreal. This kind of thing never happened in real life. Did it? How did I go from enjoying a quiet dinner alone to standing in front of what was arguably one of Rome's most romantic sights, with a strikingly handsome man's body pressed against mine? I wanted to pinch myself to make sure I wasn't dreaming again. If this was a dream, I hoped I'd never wake up. "And what's that, Eleanor?" "When in Rome," I breathed, a smile slowly cracking on his lips. I attempted to step away, but he maintained his firm hold on me. If the sexual tension between us in the restaurant was charged, it had now grown into a 5-alarm raging fire, the thumping of my heart loud enough for everyone to hear. A subtle wind blew through the plaza, sending an unruly wave of hair in front of my eyes. Dante brushed it behind my ear, the feel of his fingers on my skin turning me into putty. "Eleanor," his tone was guttural, hoarse, impassioned. "Dante," he cupped my cheeks in his strong hands, drawing in a deep breath. "You should stay away from me." There was a pleading look in his eyes. "What if I don't want to?" I answered in a small voice. "You barely know me. Sometimes that's a good thing," I insisted. "There are fewer complications. You just left your fiancé at the altar," he reminded me, his lips so close to mine. I could almost taste them. He ran his hand down my cheek, my neck, the curve of my body, settling on my waist. His words and body language were entirely contradictory, as if he were engaged in his own internal battle between his head and heart. "Your judgment is compromised right now. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. I need this. I need you. I'm just going to use you, Eleanor." "Do you think I care?" I whispered, the truth of my words surprising me. This was something the old Ellie would have never done. She would never throw herself at a man, let alone one she barely knew. She never would have even considered his invitation to accompany him to the fountain. That was precisely why I needed to do this. "I'm in Rome for 10 days, I said in the firm voice I typically reserved for the courtroom. "Then I will board a plane back to the States and never see you again. If anyone's using someone, I believe it's the other way around. Or perhaps it's mutual. Isn't that all sex is anyway, emboldened?" I straightened my spine. This was simply another negotiation. I was a damn good negotiator, as long as no one in my family was a party to it. Two people using each other for their mutual benefit. I looked away, my confidence faltering momentarily. At least it should be for their mutual benefit. But it wasn't. Was it? Dante grabbed my chin, forcing my eyes back to his, gazing at me with an expression that was hard to label. It wasn't sympathy or pity, perhaps understanding. "None of that matters," I answered, my confidence returning as I shook off the memories of my former life. "I'm done living in the past, living according to someone else's rules. My parents would die of heart failure if they knew I was currently propositioning a man in front of the Trevi fountain." "Then why are you?" Dante asked. His resolve surprised me. I thought most men would jump at the chance of a complete stranger, a tourist, no less propositioning them for a night of passion, then never seeing each other again. "Is the only reason you're doing this to spite your parents?" "I'm 28, such a baby," he commented smoothly, caressing my cheek. I melted into the contact, then swiftly snapped out of the spell his touch cast over me. "I'm far past the age of doing something just to piss off my parents. Not if all you've ever done is live by their rules." He studied me momentarily, then released his hold on me, briskly walking away. I blinked repeatedly, surprised by his sudden retreat. Dumbfounded, I watched as he maneuvered seamlessly through the crowd before turning the corner, disappearing from view. It took me a minute to snap out of whatever daze I was in. Finally, my brain told my legs to put one in front of the other, and I hurried to catch up, spying Dante walking in the direction of the restaurant. At least I thought it was toward the restaurant. All these streets seemed to look the same. Maybe it was fate, I called out, my voice echoing against the stone buildings. He stopped and turned to look at me. "You said it yourself," I continued when he remained silent. "You believe there's a reason our paths crossed. Maybe this is that reason. This." He lifted a brow, closing the distance between us with long, determined strides. My breathing grew ragged, my pulse skyrocketing from the carnal expression on his face. "Yes," I swallowed hard. You think our paths crossed simply so I could fuck you?" The way those words left his mouth excited me in a way I didn't think possible. This went against everything I believed in, yet I'd never wanted anything so badly in my life. I wanted to break a few rules. I wanted to have a one-night stand with a handsome stranger. I wanted to eat food that was high in calories and fat. I wanted to throw caution to the wind and take a risk. I wanted to laugh again. There's only one way to find out now, isn't there? He pulled me to him, nuzzling my neck. I thought you didn't believe in fate, he crooned. I closed my eyes, lost in the sensation of his touch. I didn't know anything about this man, other than he was in Los Angeles for some reason, and he owned a restaurant in Rome. Other than that, he could have been a sexual predator, a drug addict, or worse, at least in Brock's opinion, a socialist. But none of that mattered to me. I didn't care about the unlikelihood he was a hardened criminal or had strange quirks, like collecting toenails. All I cared about was the rush of electricity running through me from the feel of his body so close to mine. Then make me a believer. I didn't know what came over me at that precise moment, but the tension I'd felt building all night had become unbearable. In desperation, I grasped his cheeks in my hands and forced his mouth to mine. His body stiffened momentarily before he groaned, deepening the kiss, his tongue expertly invading my mouth. His kisses weren't reserved by any stretch of the imagination. They were full of passion and excitement. I didn't remember Brock ever kissing me like this. His kisses were chaste, restrained, modest. They were nothing like the hungry way Dante kissed me, the way he held me against him. His mouth locked on mine in a way that made me think he couldn't let go, even if he wanted to. Panting, he tore away, surprising me. He studied me for several excruciatingly long moments, and I braced myself for him to walk away, to tell me I wasn't the type of woman he was interested in. Then he grabbed my hand and yanked me down a darkened alley. Before I could say anything, he clutched my hips, lifting me and forcing my legs around his waist as he pressed my back against the wall. With fever in his eyes, he dove in for another impassioned kiss, thrusting against me. I raked my fingers through his coarse hair, lost in the sensation of him between my legs. I was wound tight, desperate for some sort of release. I was on the precipice of coming undone, my brain a slave to my starving libido. Is this what you want, Eleanor? He grunted, then cupped my face in his large hands, forcing me to peer into his eyes. Yes, he buried his head in the crook of my neck. My eyes rolled back into my head as his teeth clamped onto my skin. I gasped, the pain remarkably pleasurable. I had no idea what had come over me, but I wanted more. The ache jump-starting my heart, bringing me back to life. Is this how you like it? He murmured, his teeth never leaving my skin. Harder, I moaned, dragging my fingernails down his back. Fuck, he hissed as he continued to push against me, his motions becoming more erratic and violent. God, I want to feel you. I bet your pussy would feel amazing wrapped around my cock. I'd never been so aroused in my life. There was something so primal, so carnal, so hot about hearing Dante speak with such greediness and longing. Every nerve in my body tingled, my skin flaming. I knew practically nothing about him, yet I craved him with every fiber of my being. I want that too. Dante. I tightened my legs around his waist, reveling in the sensation of him pulsing between my thighs. I need to feel you inside me. And you will, he said, then pulled back. Our chests heaved in near unison, the sound of our labored breaths echoing against the desolate alley. When his eyes met mine, his deep pools grew heavy with turmoil. But not tonight. I furrowed my brow, confused. A second ago, he was practically fucking me against the wall. Now, he helped lower my feet back to the ground and increased the distance between us. It felt like a bucket of cold water had been splashed over me. Not tonight, I shot back, incredulous. So now you decide to be a gentleman after practically eye-fucking me all night? I stepped toward him and lowered my voice. After dry humping me against the wall, I crossed my arms. I shouldn't have allowed myself to get so carried away. Eleanor, for that, I apologize. I shook my head, rolling my eyes. I don't need your fucking pity. Dante, my face burned. I'd never been so embarrassed in my life. His rejection stung more than I expected it would. Enjoy your evening. I shoved his jacket at him, then stormed back down the alley. When I emerged onto the street, I looked around, trying to get my bearings. I hadn't paid much attention to where we were going as we walked to the fountain. Now I found myself somewhat lost. "Eleanor," Dante called out as I walked down the sidewalk, hoping I was headed in the correct direction. To where? I had no idea. I just wanted to find a cab soon. What I hissed over my shoulder as I kept walking, seeing him striding toward me. He easily caught up and grabbed my hand in his, forcing me to stop. "I do not pity you at all, so get that thought out of your head right this second," he growled. I swallowed hard at the passion with which he spoke. "In fact, I admire you a great deal." His expression softened, and he licked his lips. "You made a decision most people are too scared to. How could I pity a woman with that kind of strength? But I got carried away." He reached into his pocket and withdrew his cell phone, then typed on it for a brief moment. When he was done, he slipped it back into his pocket, returning his eyes to mine. "I don't want you to think I'm taking advantage of you." "You're not," I began, but he held up his hand. "That may be so, but you've had a bit to drink tonight." He leaned toward me, his breath dancing on my neck. "I want you to have a clear head for all the things I want to do to you." My stomach clenched, my imagination running wild with what that could entail. And what would that be? He pressed his palm on the small of my back, dragging me into him. The way his tall, muscular body felt against mine set me on fire. It was nothing like Brock's skinny frame. When Dante wrapped his arms around me, he swallowed me whole, the heat of his embrace consuming me, making escape impossible. "You'll have to wait to find out, my beautiful Eleanor, but I hope it's exactly what you're looking for." He nibbled lightly on my lower lip before stepping back. Instantly, a black sedan came to a stop beside us. A shorter man with graying hair jumped out. "Buonasera, Signor Luciano," he said, nodding a greeting as he reached for the back passenger door. The men exchanged a few words in Italian as I looked on in confusion. Finally, Dante turned to me. "This is Antonio. He will drive you back to your hotel." Oh, my shoulders fell. "If you're still serious about what we discussed this evening," he leaned toward me, his tone guttural, sensual, carnal as he whispered. "If you still want me to fuck you," he retreated, his demeanor all businesslike once more. "Meet me at the Spanish Steps at 5 tomorrow afternoon." The Spanish Steps. I raised a brow. That's in public, not exactly conducive to what we were discussing. This discussion isn't quite over yet. I need to make sure we're both on the same page with our expectations. "I don't have any expectations," I insisted. "Well, you should." He led me to the car, helping me into the passenger compartment, raising my hand to his mouth. He placed a gentle kiss on it. "I do hope I'll see you tomorrow afternoon, mia cara." He released his hold on me, then stepped back, closing the door. I kept my eyes glued on him as Antonio slinked behind the wheel and drove away. I had no idea how tonight had taken the turn it had. What had possessed me to proposition a complete stranger for a night of passion, probably unlike any I'd ever experienced. But I knew one thing for certain. I would be at the Spanish Steps tomorrow afternoon at 5. Chapter 5. I checked my watch as I paced in front of the Spanish Steps, or Piazza di Spagna. 4:58 p.m. My heart pounded in unison with my steps. The butterflies in my stomach flapped their wings relentlessly. My skin flamed with the memory of Dante's touch, aching to feel it again, fidgeting with the hem of the one sundress I'd packed. I scanned all the people congregated in the area. I couldn't even appreciate the beauty before me. I was on edge, antsy. I couldn't remember being this anxious when I sat for the bar exam. But as I waited for Dante, the anticipation of what this evening would bring made every inch of me buzz with excitement. Before I hopped on that plane, what seemed like a lifetime ago now, I stayed away from the unknown. I'd never thrown caution to the wind and done something without having a plan. It wasn't that I didn't like being spontaneous. I simply never had the opportunity to do something crazy. Not anymore. I glanced at my watch again. 4:59 p.m. Why did it seem like the seconds ticked by at such an excruciatingly slow pace? What if Dante had second thoughts? What if this whole thing was just a setup? Instantly, I felt a warmth approach from behind, my body coming alive. A hand skimmed my exposed back, pushing my blonde hair over my shoulder. "You came," a deep, accented voice murmured. My breath quickened in response to the delicate way his hand grazed my skin. His touch was the most potent drug, and I'd do whatever was necessary to experience the bliss only his hands on my flesh could give me. I spun around, my heart catching in my throat. There was something different about the way he looked at me today. Yesterday, his eyes were hungry, full of desire. Now it was more prominent, more ravenous, more libidinous. His gaze locking with mine. He grabbed my hand and, just as he did last night, raised it to his lips, feathering a soft kiss against my knuckles. But today, the kiss was more sensual, more arousing, more greedy. "I hope to," I murmured, straightening. He smirked. "You have quite the witty mouth, Eleanor." He pressed his hand against my lower back. I'm looking forward to seeing what else that mouth is capable of. He buried his head in the crook of my neck, making my skin flame. As I lay in bed last night, sleep hard to come by, I'd replayed the way his lips felt pressed against mine, the way his body moved so perfectly with mine, the way he didn't seem to have a problem touching me in public. Dante seemed too good to be true, as if he was all my fantasies come to life. "So," I began as he peppered kisses down the line of my neck, my body quivering under his expert touch. "How does this work?" He paused, his lips lingering on my skin, then pulled back. "What do you mean? Should we go back to my hotel or—" I looked down, biting my lower lip. This may come as a complete surprise. I continued through a nervous laugh. "This is the first time I've propositioned a stranger to have sex with me, then never see him again. I'm not sure of the rules here, and you think I've done this sort of thing before?" He lifted a brow. "I didn't say that. Would you think any less of me if I had—" "I am in no position to judge anyone else." "Very well." He grabbed my hand, escorting me through the piazza. "We have a few things to discuss." "I told you, I don't have any expectations. So why don't we just get on with it already?" I worried I may lose my courage to follow through if we didn't find a bedroom, and soon, I'd still prefer we go over a few things first. I pinched my lips together, giving him a look of irritation and annoyance. "Don't fret, Eleanor." He stopped in his tracks and enclosed me in his muscular arms. "It's to your advantage," he murmured, his voice husky. "To make sure every single one of your cravings is satisfied. To make sure you feel things you never thought possible. To make sure you experience everything you've imagined." My eyes fluttered into the back of my head, my body eager for his touch on every inch of me. Even then, I doubted it would be enough. "If the whole chef thing doesn't work out, you'd make a damn good gigolo." He laughed and stepped back, smiling a wicked smile. "Good to know. Shall we go talk over some tea?" He gestured toward a tea room a few feet in front of us. Sighing, I reluctantly nodded, and Dante steered me toward the building. He opened the glass door and permitted me to enter ahead of him. I felt like I had just left the mystery and romance of Rome for 19th century London. The tea room was decorated in traditional Victorian with a modern flair. Lace cloths covered the tables, velvet tapestries draped the windows, crystal chandeliers hung overhead. "Signor Luciano," one of the staff members said, rushing over to greet him, rattling off something in Italian. "In inglese, per favore," he interrupted, gesturing toward me. See. The man looked at me, smiling, then back at Dante. "We didn't know you'd be coming today," he corrected with a heavy accent. "I didn't either. I believe someone's already sitting at your favorite table." He lowered his head, giving him an apologetic look. "Va bene. Francesco, do you have something a bit more secluded?" Si. Yes, sir. This way, please." He led us past a dining area of small tables, through a doorway, and into a room with larger tables and plush velvet couches and chairs, the noise level much lower than the rest of the place. The walls were painted a turquoise color, similar to that famous blue box from Tiffany's. There were a few black and white prints in dark frames depicting well-known locations in London. Patrons sipped tea and enjoyed what appeared to be delicious cakes and cookies. It reminded me I hadn't really eaten today. I doubted I'd be able to do so now with the nerves flowing through me. The host led us to a round table in the corner, and I slid onto the circular couch. Dante offered the man his thanks, then sat beside me. He surveyed me for several long moments, unnerving me. When I was about to open my mouth and argue that coming here was pointless, his voice cut through. So tell me, Eleanor. Yes, my voice was abnormally high-pitched, displaying my nerves. Why? Why what? He leaned closer, peering at me with seductive eyes. Why me, he asked in the beautiful baritone I'd heard in my dreams. Why do you want to do this? Do. I chewed on the inside of my cheek, pondering. There were so many reasons on the tip of my tongue. Did he want me to simply flame his ego and tell him how attracted I was to him? How I'd fantasized about what he would feel like between my legs? Analyzing his confident demeanor, he didn't strike me as the type of person who needed an ego boost. Unlike Brock, instead of making up some benign answer that would get us into a bedroom quicker, I opted for complete transparency. Do you know what it's like having every second of your life dictated for you? I tore my eyes from his, staring out the window at the fountain in front of the Spanish Steps, marveling at how different everything had become in just 48 hours. Until I stepped onto that plane, my entire life had been planned out for me. I never had a choice in anything. Anything, he narrowed his eyes. Anything, I emphasized. Meeting his gaze once more, from the clothes I wore, to what college I attended, to the color of my hair. I lifted a lock, then pushed it over my shoulder. I'm not really a blonde, but you would have figured that out eventually anyway. Or I hoped you would. I looked off into the distance, fidgeting with my hands in my lap. My parents had a certain image to uphold, so they made sure I obtained a degree of their choosing, then went to law school. So you're a lawyer, he commented in a drawn-out voice, as if it made all the sense in the world. Why have some lawyer jokes you want to tell? I've probably heard them all at this point. I would never degrade anyone's profession like that. Are you unhappy with your career? My face lit up. Actually, I loved law school. It wasn't the path I would have chosen for myself, but I was good at it, the research, the analysis, the persuasive writing. It was the first time in my life I felt like I had some control. Sure, I had to take the classes all law students are required to take, like contracts and constitutional law, but I was able to choose electives that interested me. My face fell. After I passed the bar, my father got me a job at a huge firm, and I was stuck doing corporate law. I'm guessing it's not the area you wanted to go into. Not even close. Don't get me wrong, I added quickly. I love what I do. Is it my dream job? No, but I'm really good at it. I toyed with the tines of the fork in front of me. It's the one area in my life I've ever had a say. Dante leaned back against the couch, studying me with intrigue, as if he were seeing me for the first time. If it were up to you, what area of law would you want to practice? I released a breath, relaxing my shoulders. Environmental. That's a commendable field. Why did your parents discourage it? I snorted out a laugh at how ridiculous his question was. Then again, he had no idea who my father was. Let's just say my father tends to believe global warming is a myth, and we should bleed our resources dry by drilling everywhere. I'm assuming you have a difference of opinion. I tapped my fingernails on the tablecloth. I'm of the opinion that it's important to know our nation's history. There was a reason we enacted regulatory legislation. Why we have agencies overseeing clean air, water. I shook my head. People think the planet will provide endless resources, but they don't realize how much we're destroying it every day. Just then, a petite, dark-haired woman carrying a tray approached our table, interrupting our conversation, offering us a smile. She placed a white teapot and a few dishes with various cakes and cookies in front of us. I didn't recall anyone ever coming to take our order. I assumed Dante simply had a standing order here. Once we were alone, he grabbed the pot. Tea? Yes, please. He flipped over the cup in front of me and began to pour. Milk or sugar? No, thank you. I prefer my tea black. I studied him as he poured tea into his own cup, adding just a bit of milk. No sugar for you. I brought my cup to my mouth, softly blowing on it. That's correct. Eleanor, I prefer my tea as I do my women. Bold, assertive, with just a hint of natural sweetness. He winked. Something about his brazen attitude made me feel like a giddy teenager. Early in life, I was taught to always maintain my composure in front of other people. It was my level-headed and placid demeanor during negotiations that typically unnerved my opponent. I never displayed any emotion, never raised my voice, always remained calm. Making a name for myself in a profession that had been dominated by men for hundreds of years hadn't been easy. I'd made it a point to be as reserved and thick-skinned as all my male colleagues. It was the only way to get ahead. "Tell me why you left your ex-fiancé at the altar." Dante's voice snapped me out of my thoughts. I cleared my throat, then placed my cup down on the saucer in front of me. It was more a relationship out of convenience than anything else. Our parents were friends. I hesitated, unsure how much I should tell Dante about my family, whether he was familiar with American politics at all. As I'm sure you can imagine, since my parents liked to have a say in every other part of my life, they also had a say in who I could date and marry. I gave him a knowing look. I never questioned it, although I should have. I'd lived my entire life bending to their will. I didn't think there was any other option but to do as they said. My mother made me dye my hair blonde before my first date with Brock. For crying out loud, she said he preferred blondes. "It sounds a bit archaic," Dante commented, his leg brushing mine. "It does, doesn't it?" I said thoughtfully, then quickly added, "You have to understand, I didn't grow up in a regular family." I swirled my spoon around in my teacup, needing to do something with my hands. My father had a very public persona. Dante lifted a brow, obviously intrigued. I'd rather not say too much. It's irrelevant to the point at hand. However, because of this, he was very concerned with how his family was perceived, right down to how we dressed, where we went, and who his daughter dated. "Were you at least attracted to your ex?" I paused to consider his question, staring off into space. I should have been at some point, shouldn't I? I returned my eyes to Dante's. I mean, how could I have allowed myself to be so manipulated as to agree to marry someone I didn't even have feelings for? I guess I just didn't know any differently. I remember hearing some of my college friends talking about the guys they were dating, how they'd buy them flowers, surprise them by standing outside their class when they got out. There was none of that with Brock. Hell, I was lucky if he remembered my birthday. I figured maybe it was because he was 7 years older than me. We started dating when I was a freshman in college, and he was finishing up his last year of law school. I bit my lip. I remember talking to my mother about it one time when I questioned whether I should call things off with him. Naturally, she didn't exactly support the idea. All she said was that people in love seemed to forget what was important in life. And what would that be? My eyes locked with his. I opened my mouth, pausing briefly. I wish I knew. "So you've never been romanced before fate intervened and our paths crossed." I shot him a fake look of annoyance. "You've never felt the heat of a man's eyes raking over every inch of you, making you squirm." He lifted a brow. "Brock never made me squirm," I answered with obvious disdain. Dante narrowed his gaze. "What do you mean by that?" "What do you think I mean by that?" I shot back in a bold voice, giving him a knowing look. He opened his mouth, his eyes widening as realization washed over him. Brock liked routine. I looked forward, straightening my shoulders, fidgeting with the teacup. Throughout our relationship, we stuck to a pre-planned schedule for when we'd have sex. Every Wednesday morning, he would set an alarm 20 minutes earlier than normal, roll on a condom, then get to it. No foreplay, no making sure I felt good, nothing. "You're joking." I raised my teacup to my mouth. "I wish I were." Dante shook his head, releasing a long breath. If I were in his shoes, I'd probably have the same reaction. "Brock never gave me an orgasm," I blurted out before I could stop myself. "You just mean during sex, correct?" "No," I answered, keeping my eyes trained on his. "I mean ever. Like I said, there was never any foreplay. None at all." "None at all?" He leaned closer, his voice becoming softer and more sensual. "How long were you together?" 10 long years. "Was he your first?" He rested his hand on my leg, his fingers slowly grazing the skin around my knee. "Yes," I inhaled a sharp breath from the feeling of his hand on my flesh. "Have you ever had an orgasm?" "Of course I have," I insisted. "Just not at anyone else's hand other than my own," I mumbled. "What would make you stay with someone like that?" A hint of curiosity crossed his brow. I didn't know any other way. I knew it made no sense that someone who exuded the image of being put together and secure, like I did, would put up with everything I had for so long. In truth, it never really bothered me. Until recently. It was just part of my life. I had practically no say over my personal life, so I focused on things I did have control over, like my job. I had found happiness there. I thought it was normal. Thought all the stories my friends told me about their experiences were embellished. There is nothing normal about being with someone so selfish as to not make sure you were taken care of. He scooted closer, his hand roaming my leg. A relationship is supposed to be mutually beneficial for both parties. His breath was hot on my skin as his lips drew closer to my neck. A heat burned in my stomach, the feel of Dante's hand on my leg making my need for him grow with each passing second. It's supposed to involve some give, some take. He lifted the skirt of my dress, his hand inching farther north. When he slid back my panties and began to tease my clit, I gasped. I shot my eyes to him, my breath hitching. "What are you?" He buried his head in the crook of my neck, his breath warming me. "I plan to make sure you're finally taken care of." "Eleanor." "But we're in public," I said in a throaty voice, making no move to stop what he was doing. I couldn't remember ever being so aroused. My entire body ignited as his fingers ran my wetness over me, teasing me with his light touch. I discreetly spread my legs slightly, giving him better access. I had completely tuned out everything else around us, the clatter of china, the low conversation, the faint music. For all I knew, we were in our own private room, and this was just the start of something incredible. If the way his fingers touched me with such cunning and deftness was any indication, I couldn't help but wonder what would happen when we took this even further. "God. Eleanor." He groaned. His husky voice sent a tremor down my spine. "Do you have any idea how amazing you feel? Do I make you this wet?" I closed my eyes, his words flaming a need I didn't know I had. Brock had never so much as uttered a single word to me during sex. Dante was barely touching me, but the sensation of his fingers gliding over my center made me feel more fulfilled than I had during any previous act of intimacy. My mind was blank. Too many different sensations rolling through me at once: pleasure, bliss, hunger, arousal, serenity, happiness. "Answer me, Eleanor," Dante demanded. "Do I do this to you?" "Yes," I whimpered, my chest rising and falling in a faster rhythm. I'd never felt so alive before. I knew this was so very wrong, but the electricity flowing through every inch of me made me not care. "Good." When he pushed a finger inside, I had to bite back a moan. "You are so tight. Eleanor, I can't wait to feel you pulsing around my cock when I finally give you exactly what you need." He brushed his lips against my neck. "What you've been deprived of for too many years now. Is that what you want?" "Yes." I exhaled, pulsing against his hand. My body was climbing higher and higher. I could almost see my release in sight. This all seemed like a dream, an incredible, erotic dream. Me, too. Eleanor. God, I want that so bad. He paused, but not right now. He abruptly pulled his hand away. I gaped at him, panting, disbelief filling my wide eyes. I was seconds away from crumbling into pieces and couldn't believe he was going to leave me this wound up. "What?" "I want to hear you moaning my name when you come," he said very matter-of-factly, as if this were a business negotiation. He scooted away, lifting his teacup to his mouth, taking a sip. "I want you to let go of all your preconceived notions of what sex is supposed to be like. I want you to let yourself be completely free with me. You said you had no expectations. Well, I do. I want to give you your wings. I don't want you to think sex is a taboo subject. It isn't. It's natural. It's beautiful. It's pure. You're not free to fully express yourself here." I blinked repeatedly, clenching my legs together to get some sort of relief from the pressure still building inside me. So you're just going to leave me like this? Hopefully not for too long. He winked. Now, tell me, what are your likes, dislikes? I avoided his eyes, my cheeks flushing a brighter shade of red than they already were as I squirmed in the booth. There's nothing to be embarrassed about. If you're serious about this, I'd prefer to know what you like. What turns you on? I don't know, I answered honestly. Surely you must have some sort of idea as to what makes you feel good. I opened my mouth, unsure of what to say. At 28, I was more than aware that I was rather inexperienced when it came to this kind of thing. When I remained silent, he pushed. When I was just fingering you, what did you enjoy about it? He sliced his fork into one of the decadent cakes and brought it to his mouth, acting as cool and collected as he always had, as if we were talking about something as mundane as the weather. I don't want you to be embarrassed. Eleanor, he comforted me. It's nothing to be ashamed of. Did it feel good when I had my hand up your skirt? He placed his fork on the table, then brushed his fingers against my leg. It was such a subtle gesture, but my entire body became desperate with need. I wanted to grab his hand, shove it back up my skirt, and make him finish what he started. I want to show you sex can be such a beautiful thing between two consenting adults, that there's nothing wrong or embarrassing about discussing it. There's nothing wrong with enjoying sex. Too many people listen to their religions and think they've sinned by indulging in this perfectly normal act. Don't. He leaned closer, his teeth scraping my neck delicately. Don't feel guilty for listening to your desires. I straightened my posture, drawing in a long breath. I could do this. This was just another negotiation. It was simply two mature adults discussing what they wanted to get out of this arrangement. Nothing more. It was completely irrelevant that the topic was of a sexual nature. I'd mastered the art of remaining poised in this type of setting. Nothing Dante did could affect me. Not the way he looked at me with a depraved hunger in his eyes. Not the way he licked his lips, as if he'd been thirsty for days and had finally been led to water. Not the way his smooth voice crooning my name made a shiver trickle down my spine. It felt good when you played with my clit. I replied in an even, professional voice. Well, good probably isn't the correct word. It drove me crazy when your touch was light. Barely there. I thought I was going to lose it, but in a good way. I cracked a smile. I take it no one's ever done something like that for you before? That's for sure, I mumbled. But you pleasure yourself, correct? I raised my tea to my lips, feeling my short-lived resolve crack. I'd never met someone so bold, so confident in his sexuality as to ask these types of questions. As much as I wanted to treat this like any other negotiation, it was proving to be impossible. In every other negotiation I'd been a party to, I'd done my research. I knew my client's file inside and out. Here, I felt like I'd been given the case 2 minutes before having to be in court and was now flying by the seat of my pants. Yes, I finally answered. Do you use any toys? What, no? I responded quickly, as if I'd just been accused of murder. There's nothing wrong if you have, I sighed. I don't have any. I lived with Brock and— Say no more. Dante put his hand up, interrupting me. I have a feeling he wouldn't take too kindly to it if he found them. He'd probably have a few choice words for me, I muttered under my breath. Dante studied me, his gaze unsettling. Then he sighed, pushing a plate with a slice of chocolate cake toward me. Here, eat something. I'm not hungry. My stomach was in knots. The anticipation had me completely unglued. What have you eaten today? I had a few cups of coffee this morning. That's a beverage. It doesn't count. I also had some fruit. I'm not a big breakfast eater. Why not? I shrugged. I'm just not. And I don't need you to tell me it's the most important meal of the day, I added with a smirk. Then eat some cake. He leaned toward me. You need to have some energy for later. How much later? I raised a brow. You'll see. He winked, huffing. I grabbed my fork and sliced into the cake, then raised it to my lips. My mouth watered as the aroma of chocolate, sugar, and vanilla met my senses. I slid the fork into my mouth, savoring the rich flavor. Delicious, isn't it? It's no match for that gelato I had last night. I passed him a coy look. Duly noted. A thick silence fell between us while we indulged in our cakes, making me restless. Dante, however, seemed to be completely unaffected by it. I began to think this was all part of his plan. "Why did you bring me here?" I finally blurted out after I'd eaten half the slice. "What do you mean?" He dabbed his mouth with his napkin. "Exactly what I said. Why are you making this elaborate deal out of having sex with me? I propositioned you. I showed up today to prove I was still interested, even without the influence of alcohol. So why all of this?" I waved my hand around the table. "Why can't we just get down to business and get it over with?" "Get it over with," he repeated slowly. "You have to know the anticipation is killing me right now." I lowered my voice, trying to maintain my composure. I was so close to coming before. I said in a bold move, "Having to sit here is driving me crazy." "It's driving me crazy, too," he admitted. "Sure," I rolled my eyes. "You look like you're ready to fall apart." My tone oozed with sarcasm. "Don't mistake my composure for not being affected by how alluring you are, how turned on I am by you." He leaned in, his eyes searing me as he spoke in a seductive tone. "Every time I've raised my tea to my mouth, I've been treated to your scent on my fingers. Do you have any idea how much I want to throw you on the table and bury my face between your legs, to make your entire body shake from my touch, to bring you to heights you've never experienced?" His hand roamed to my thigh, and he gripped it with more force than I expected. The initial shock made me gasp. It was somewhat painful, but I felt so much pleasure in that pain. To know I was the first man to ever have the good fortune of tasting you, of giving you an orgasm so intense. Your mind becomes a blank slate, a complete slave to the rest of your body. He pulled back, but his grasp on my leg remained firm. I had a feeling there would be a mark on it later. Something about Dante led me to believe that was the point. He wanted to mark me, claim me as his. Clearing his throat, he regained his composure, releasing his hold. "Like I said, you certainly affect me too. Then why are you putting on this show? Why didn't we just go somewhere more private? You've never experienced foreplay. In my opinion, that's the best part. But this isn't foreplay. This is just you being an insufferable tease." "Ah, Eleanor, you are quite mistaken. This whole afternoon has been foreplay. It doesn't have to be intimate, although that's nice too. Foreplay is all about building up the tension, about bringing each person to the brink of their breaking point, then shattering into tiny pieces." His lips whispered against my neck, sending a delicious shiver down my spine. "And I plan on shattering you." Chapter 6. "Where are we going?" I asked Dante after we finished our tea. I struggled to keep up with his long strides as he led me past the Spanish Steps, to my place. He gazed upon me with an almost predatory stare. My heart slammed against my chest, anticipation bubbling in my veins. I didn't think I'd been this on edge when Brock and I had sex for the first time, which we'd planned beforehand. Afterward, all I could remember thinking was how I didn't see what the big deal was. I had felt nothing, other than a dull ache, and not in a good way. Dante continued down a narrow street away from the Piazza di Spagna, then stopped outside an arched door. Withdrawing a set of keys from his pocket, he unlocked the door, opening it, allowing me to enter in front of him. His dark eyes raked over every inch of me, every dip and valley, every curve, every freckle. I felt raw and vulnerable, but at the same time more protected and cared for than I ever had. Licking his lips as we stood in the small lobby of what appeared to be a luxury apartment building, he stepped toward me. I remained frozen in place, a tingle spreading through me from the wanton and shameless way he looked at me. "You can still back out if you're having second thoughts." He brushed a strand of my wavy hair behind my ear, his fingers lingering on my face. "I'm not having second thoughts," I answered in a small voice, lacking the confidence I wanted to exude. He pulled my body into his, somewhat forcefully. I could feel his need for me. Good. His lips whispered against mine, the contact sending a spark from my mouth to my fingers and everywhere else. Too soon. He released me from his warm embrace, then grabbed my hand, leading me past an elevator with an out-of-order sign. "I apologize for the inconvenience," he said as he opened the door to a stairwell. "Hopefully, The elevator will be repaired soon. I don't mind, I insisted, following him up the stairs. I was hoping you'd help me work up a sweat. I just thought it would be in the bedroom, I winked. Oh, Eleanor. It will most certainly be in the bedroom. I hope you're in good shape because I plan on pushing your limits. Don't forget, I countered. I was about to get married. Part of my pre-wedding routine the past 6 months had been working out with a trainer on a daily basis, all courtesy of my lovely mother. I rolled my eyes. She insisted on ordering a size 2 wedding dress for me, although I was a size 4 at the time. Last night was the first real meal I've had in ages. Dante stopped in his tracks. You're joking. I wish I were. Aren't parents supposed to love their children no matter what? Therein lies the problem. I doubt my parents ever loved me. They only had me out of obligation. I turned from the stunned look on his face and continued up the stairs, unsure what floor to stop on. I just didn't want to look into Dante's compassionate eyes right now. It wasn't as bad as it sounded. It was all I ever knew. As I rounded another set of stairs, I heard Dante's footsteps coming up behind me. For what it's worth, he said. I think you're perfect. I wouldn't change a thing about you. Thank you. I offered him a small smile. And you've certainly come to the right place. What do you mean? We topped the final set of stairs and I followed Dante down a long corridor. I'd lost count of how many floors we'd climbed. It had to be at least 5 or 6. You've been starved for too long, in more ways than one. He came to a stop outside a wooden door with an iron handle. It looked heavy. Lucky you decided to proposition a chef, isn't it? What can I say? I shrugged as he inserted a key into the lock, opening the door and holding it for me to walk in ahead of him. I figured I'd kill 2 birds with 1 stone. I'll be well fed and well fucked. Unless you're entirely full of shit and are complete rubbish in bed. As I walked inside, I gave him a sly grin, then abruptly stopped in my tracks, blown away by the beauty surrounding me. The far wall was made up almost entirely of glass, the obelisk of the Spanish Steps prominent. In awe, I continued into his apartment. Although this was so much more than just an apartment, it was luxury to the max. The open living area boasted high ceilings with exposed beams. The walls were a crisp white, natural light from large windows flooding in and filling the enormous space. Tasteful art pieces adorned the walls on either side of the windows, everything modern and stylistic. I wandered farther inside, past a set of oversized gray sofas, dropping my purse on a glass coffee table. I continued toward the French doors. I felt Dante approach. He reached in front of me, unlatching one of the doors and opening it. I stepped onto a large veranda, the sun warming my skin. Wow, I exhaled, soaking in the opulence, even in this outdoor space. To the left was a 10-seat table, along with a built-in barbecue area. To the right was a raised deck containing several cushioned lounge chairs and outdoor sofas. If I lived here, I'd spend all my free time reading on one of those chairs. This place is incredible. I'm glad you like it. I travel about 200 days out of the year. When I'm home, I like to be comfortable. It may be a bit much for just one person, but I work hard. I turned around to face him, placing my hands on my hips, so you can play even harder. Precisely. Eleanor, do you like to play hard? He cocked a brow at me. I don't know, but I hope to find out. With heat in his eyes, he pulled me against him, wrapping my hair around his hand and forcing my head back. I swallowed hard, blissfully trapped in place. My heartbeat echoed in my ears, and I felt lightheaded. My skin buzzed with anticipation as I braced myself for whatever Dante had planned. Are you sure? He lowered his mouth toward mine, his breath heating my lips. Why do you keep asking me that if I didn't want this? I wouldn't have shown up today. His grip on my hair tightened. Tell me you want me, he growled. I blinked repeatedly, my mouth becoming dry. No one had ever spoken to me like this before. He was demanding, bold, powerful. The authority in his voice made my need for him heighten. Something about the harshness in his tone awoke a yearning inside me I never knew existed. I want you, I murmured softly. A smile tugged on his lips and he covered my mouth. kissing me with more fire and longing than I thought possible for a man who was unknown to me yesterday. His kiss was thrilling, reverent, sincere, at complete odds with the way he gripped my hair. His tongue tangled with mine, the dull throbbing between my legs growing more pronounced. I'd never been so affected by another man's kiss before. When Brock kissed me, even when he forced his tongue down my throat in a way that made me think he was trying to gag me, I didn't feel anything close to this. No word in the English language could adequately describe what Dante's kisses did to me. They made me forget everything, made me feel as if I'd get through this time in my life and finally become the person I was meant to be. I didn't know who that was quite yet, but I couldn't help but feel this one night with Dante could play a part in helping me figure that out. He pulled away from me, his chest rising and falling with his heavy breaths. Deep pools of lust stared back at me. He clutched my hand, bringing me back inside. As much as I'd love to fuck you out here, I won't do it in broad daylight. You're mine right now, nobody else's, including anyone catching a glimpse from one of the nearby windows. He tugged me through the living area and toward a set of wrought iron stairs in the far corner. Nighttime, however, is a completely different story. Eleanor, he added with a lascivious grin, leading me up the stairs and down a long hallway. He slowed as we approached the last door on the left, then pushed it open. He stepped back and I walked in. A large king-sized bed sat in the center of a lavish bedroom. The decor seemed to fit the style of the rest of his apartment. Clean, airy, modern, bathed in natural light. Releasing my hand, he strode to the windows and closed the shutters, shrouding the room in near darkness, apart from a bit of light peeking through the slats. He paused briefly, then turned around to face me once more. This time, there was a sort of animalistic need in his eyes as he ran his gaze over me. It didn't matter that I was fully dressed. He had already stripped me bare. My chest rose and fell in a quicker pattern as he strode toward me. This was it. This was what I'd been fantasizing about since I'd met him. This was my chance to finally find out what intimacy was really about. What it was like to be with someone who cared about my needs as much as his own. "Turn around," he ordered. Without blinking, I followed his command. He approached from behind, brushing my hair over my shoulders, leaving my nape exposed. A chill ran through me, the unknown making me hyper-alert. His hand grazed over my shoulder blades, finding the zipper of my sundress. I held my breath as he slowly lowered it, pushing it off my shoulders, the dress falling to my feet. My legs felt like they were about to give out under the weight of everything I'd been carrying for years. As if Dante could sense what I was feeling, he pressed his palm against my exposed stomach, supporting me as he gently rocked his hips against me. "Your skin is so soft, Eleanor," he murmured. I began to move with the rhythm he set. So creamy, so pure. I leaned my head back against him, succumbing to his touch. His hand roamed from my waist up to my chest, gingerly brushing against my breast. His touch was as subtle as a breeze. Every muscle in my body clenched with promise. When he rolled my nipple between his fingers, I moaned, a slave to the sensation. "So perky," he bit out, then squeezed my nipple, the sudden pain taking me by surprise. I yelped, my chest heaving as 1,000 emotions ran through me. "Do you like that?" he asked with a growl, a complete 180 from the gentle lover he was less than a minute ago. My brain searched for an answer. I wanted to scream at the top of my lungs that yes, I loved it, that it was the most satisfying thing I'd ever felt. How could I possibly admit that something so painful gave me more pleasure than I thought possible? Was there something wrong with me? Why did I want him to do it again? But harder. Why did I want to see how far I could take this? Had I been so sheltered my entire life that I was now having depraved thoughts? "Tell me, Eleanor." His voice cut through. "This is about finding out how we can give each other what we want and need. I need to know what you like, what you don't." He continued rocking his hips against me. It was like a dance, a very sensual, erotic dance. Having sex is just like a negotiation. We each have needs and wants. There may be a little give and take, some tugging and pulling. His fingers found my nipple again and pulled it, the shock forcing me to scream out. The ecstasy from the shooting ache was so intense, I thought I would turn to dust, perhaps even some screaming and begging. I could hear the smile in his voice as I stood there, panting, desperate for more, desperate for him. In the end, I'm confident we'll both be more than satisfied with the process and final result. Now, Eleanor. His teeth scraped against my neck. Did you like that? Yes, I whimpered. What did you like about it? The pain. I answered without even pausing to think about the proper response. That didn't matter anymore. I was motivated by one thing alone, incredible pleasure. Ah, really now? Yes. His fingers grazed my nipple again. I squirmed under his touch, bracing myself for him to squeeze again. I wanted it, needed it. More brutal, more callous, more painful. Well, he murmured in a provocative voice. His hand roamed from my breast, down my stomach, lingering around the waistline of my panties. This is an unexpected surprise. Pleasant, yet unexpected. If you're agreeable, I'd like to explore this with you a bit more. His teeth clamped onto my neck, sending a shockwave directly to my core. Yes, I moaned, closing my eyes as I focused on the exhilaration flowing through me. I felt like I'd been asleep for years and had finally been awoken by a prince's kiss. A very erotic, salacious kiss. He gripped my hip and spun me around. Before I could react, his lips crushed against mine. He lifted me with ease, and I wrapped my legs around his waist, our kiss becoming frenzied. There was so much excitement, so much fever, so much need, as if he'd no longer be able to breathe or go on living without my lips on his. He carried me to the bed and carefully lowered me onto the mattress, our lips never parting. Kicking off my shoes, I fumbled with the buttons of his dress shirt, desperate to feel the heat of his skin on mine. He tore his lips from mine, catching my wrists in his large hands as he loomed over me. Whoa, Eleanor, slow down. We have all night. Where's the fire? Everywhere. I breathed out, frustrated. I'm going to lose my mind if you don't fuck me right now. I'd never spoken so crass before, but it felt right. Everything with Dante just felt right. You're not ready yet. Better yet, I'm not. I like to take my time and enjoy the woman I'm with. A pang of disappointment squeezed at my chest at the thought that I was probably just another notch in this guy's belt. Wasn't that what I wanted? I was an American in Rome for a little over a week. It was ridiculous to be upset with the knowledge that he'd invite another woman into this very same apartment, seducing her using the very same words he used on me. Still, I couldn't help but feel somewhat downcast at the notion. He released his grip on my wrists and lowered his head to my breast as I pushed down any hint of disappointment at the thought of him with someone else. He'd warned me he was just going to use me. I was just using him, too, wasn't I? I love the way your skin tastes, he commented, his tongue tracing delicate circles around my breast. I moaned as he continued his relentless teasing, his teeth grazing my nipple. He knew precisely what I wanted, yet stopped just shy of giving it to me. I ran my hands through his thick, dark hair, my fingernails digging into his scalp. I bucked my hips, trying to tell him what I was so desperate for. Is there something I can help you with, Eleanor? He asked coyly. You know there is, I answered between heavy breaths. Every inch of my body was on high alert, a wildfire rushing over me. He lightly clamped his teeth on my breast, my breath catching. My body tensed momentarily before I relaxed into the contact. I tightened my legs around his waist, my breathing growing heavier and heavier. The more it hurt, the more pleasure flowed through me, the more I wanted to see how much further I could push this. Too soon. He let go of my nipple and sat back, staring at me. He ran a lone finger from my sternum down toward my belly button, his pace languid, torturous. My skin ached for him. The closer he got to the waistband of my panties, the hotter the fire burned inside me. His finger continued past my waist, smoothing over the silky material of my panties. Fireworks erupted when he thumbed my wetness, my underwear a rather unwelcome barrier. His fingers teased the inside of my thighs, so close to the material of my panties, delicately brushing underneath, then retreating. I squirmed, unsure how much more of this I could take without falling apart. "I want to watch," he declared, licking his lips. "What?" He brought his mouth back to mine, his hand cupping me between my legs. "I want to watch you play with this soaking wet pussy." I began, biting my lower lip. His steady gaze unnerved me. I shifted my eyes from his. "Eleanor, look at me." I obeyed his command. "I want to see what you like. I would never judge you for exploring your sexuality. That's what this is about. I want to explore what you've been forced to bury. You've masturbated before, correct?" I subtly nodded. "That's all this is." He hooked his fingers into my panties and slid them down my legs, leaving me completely exposed to him. The thought didn't frighten me like I thought it would. I felt like I was meant to be here with him, in this moment, to do this, to open my eyes to something new. He grasped one of my wrists, lowering my hand down my body, releasing his hold. He toyed with my folds with light fingers, lost in the sensation, needing more. I followed his lead, my fingers running over my wetness. Dante drew in a shaky breath. I met his eyes, my gaze locked with his. I wanted nothing more than to close my eyes and lose myself in how unbelievably turned on I was at the notion I was doing this in front of another person. But something about watching the hunger in his expression grow more and more fevered with each stroke made me burn even hotter for him. My muscles tightened, and I knew I wouldn't last much longer. My chest heaved, my body flamed, my mind succumbed to my deepest desires. I didn't care about anything else. My sole motivation was to feel, and Dante made me feel more than I had in years, even though he wasn't even touching me. Sensing how close I was, he grabbed my wrist, stopping me. "Enough," he growled, his eyes on fire as his jaw clenched. He stood from the bed and quickly shrugged out of his shirt and pants. But not quickly enough. Every second that passed, the more the flame in my core grew dull. I panted and squirmed, desperate for an orgasm that had remained just out of reach for too long now. Finally rid of his clothes, he crawled back onto the bed, his strong body hovering over mine. I ran my hands across his broad shoulders, down his sculpted arms, relishing in the feeling of his warm, olive-toned skin under my fingers. I didn't know what I'd done in my life to be lucky enough to end up here with a man as breathtakingly beautiful as Dante. But I no longer cared. He lowered his head to mine, his tongue plunging into my mouth. I wrapped my legs around his waist, his arousal pulsing against my sensitized clit. I raked my hands down his muscular back, desperate to feel even more of him, groaning. He pulled out of the kiss and, in one swift move, flipped me onto my stomach. He snaked his arm around my waist, propping me on my hands and knees. This was completely new to me. Brock had never experimented with different positions. He never even let me be on top. I stared at the art hanging over the bed, my skin aching for Dante's touch. I couldn't tell what it was. There were lots of reds and pinks, maybe a flower of some sort. Regardless, there was something incredibly erotic about it. The sound of a packet opening echoed through the room. I glanced over my shoulder to see Dante smoothing a condom onto his rather large erection. "Face forward, Eleanor," he ordered. The harshness and severity in his tone sent my heart racing, butterflies flitting in my stomach. I followed his command, staring at the wrought iron headboard. I couldn't help but think this was the perfect headboard to be tied to. I'd never been exposed to any sort of light bondage in my life, but the idea of Dante restraining me and having his way with me sent a delicious shiver down my spine. His words from a few minutes ago came rushing back, how he wanted to help me explore my sexuality. Maybe this was what I liked. Maybe I liked the pain, the thought of the unknown, the anticipation, the ability to just stop thinking for a brief period of time and surrender control to someone who would use it for our mutual pleasure. Dante's hands lighted against the skin of my ass, and I squirmed, bracing myself for him to enter me. Without warning, he landed a hard blow on my backside. I grunted in pain. He folded himself over me, biting my neck. "Did you like that?" He rammed a finger inside me, my eyes rolling into the back of my head, feeling more aroused than I thought possible. I no longer worried that there was something depraved about finding so much pleasure in this act. Maybe this was the reason Dante had entered my world, to open my eyes and breathe life back into me. "Harder," I begged, my mouth dry. "Good girl," he murmured. He removed his finger and landed an even more powerful blow to the other cheek. I screamed out. "Harder." I buried my head into the pillow, clutching onto the headboard so tightly. My knuckles turned white. He reeled his hand back again, delivering an even more brutal blow. Instantly, he slammed into me from behind, filling me in a way I didn't think possible. He gripped my hips, his motions relentless. I tightened my hold on the headboard, every muscle in my body taut as Dante fucked me. He'd awoken something deep inside me, a craving I never knew existed, but one that was now nearly impossible to satisfy. I tried to prop myself up on my elbows, but Dante forced me back down, pushing my head into the pillow. "Stay just like that," he breathed through his teeth. "Do you have any idea how fucking beautiful you are in this position? Completely exposed and at my mercy." He drove into me harder, faster, with more fury. "Dante," I moaned, so close to falling over the edge. My limbs began to shake, my muscles trembling. "You feel better than I imagined." He leaned down, nibbling on my shoulder blades as he hooked his arm around my waist, forcing me upright. His motions slowed, becoming more relaxed and deliberate as we kneeled on his bed, my back glued to his front. "I imagined it too," I confessed, lost in the sensation. "Tell me." His hand roamed across my stomach, making its way to my breast. "After I landed yesterday, I took a nap. I had a dream, and you were in it." "Oh, really?" he mused, lightly squeezing my nipple. "Yes." "What were we doing in this dream?" His hips rocked against me gently, as if he knew I was close, but was prolonging my pleasure. "You were fucking me." His lips grazed my shoulder blades as he wrapped my hair in his hand, yanking my head back. "Is it everything you fantasized it would be?" "No." He pulled my hair harder. I yelped from the pain, but he didn't loosen his grip. This was precisely the response I'd hoped for. "It's better." "Good girl." His motions gradually increased once more. "Hold onto the headboard with one hand. Touch yourself with the other." This time, there was absolutely no hesitation on my part. Leaning on my elbow, I gripped the iron headboard, using it to brace myself, and ran my other hand down my stomach, finding my swollen clit. I moaned, overwhelmed with sensation as Dante increased his pace, his movements becoming frenzied and erratic. Within seconds, I fell apart, waves of gratification washing over me, my orgasm hard and drawn out. "That's right," Dante breathed. "That's how it should be, Eleanor." He grabbed my hips and pulled out. In one swift move, he flipped me onto my back and slammed into me once more. I'd barely come down from my first orgasm, but my body was already on the precipice of shattering all over again. Dante slowed his rhythm, rocking his hips into mine. With each drive, he pushed me closer and closer. He leaned on his elbows, hovering over me, his motions gentle, deep, perfect. His tongue invaded my mouth, and I wrapped my legs around his waist, meeting him thrust for thrust. "God, I love how you feel," he murmured. "The fact your ex only wanted to do this once a week boggles my mind. He shook his head, his eyes growing heavy with desire, and something else I couldn't quite explain. "I want to just crawl inside you." He pushed even deeper into me, then withdrew, repeating the pattern over and over again. Each invasion brought me higher and higher until I came undone, trembling around him again, my eyes rolling into the back of my head. He pressed his lips back to mine as he shook and jerked, grunting through his own release. We remained completely still for several long moments, our bodies connected. The only sound in the cavernous room was that of our heavy breathing. When I couldn't take the pressure anymore, I loosened the grip my legs had around his waist, my muscles limp. I had a feeling I'd be sore tomorrow morning, but in the best way possible. Dante buried his head in my neck, peppering soft kisses down it, His gentleness was at complete odds with the way he just fucked me, but it was exactly what I needed. It was as if he had an Ellie Crenshaw handbook and had studied each word of it ahead of time. Once our breathing was under control, he rolled off me and removed the condom, tossing it in a nearby trash bin. I hesitated, wondering if this was my cue to leave. I wasn't exactly sure of the etiquette here. Then he returned to the bed, pulling me against him, my back to his front. He covered our bodies with his luxurious duvet, and I closed my eyes, reveling in the comfort he provided me, regardless of how short-lived it was. "I like this," I murmured, my voice lazy with exhaustion. "What's that?" he hummed. "Post-fucking snuggling. It's my favorite part as well. I've never done it before," I admitted drowsily. I closed my heavy eyelids, struggling to keep them open. "That's because you've been with the wrong man, Eleanor, and I intend to make it my mission to prove that to you while you're in Roma. I have a feeling I'm really going to like Italy." Chapter 7. The faint aroma of coffee made its way to my senses, and my eyes fluttered open. I stared at my surroundings, disoriented at first, before I remembered where I was. Dante's. I sat up in the bed, glancing beside me to see he wasn't there. I pushed back the duvet and raised myself to my feet, my muscles sore as I padded across the room toward the large windows. Night had fallen, and I wondered how long I had been asleep. Finding Dante's shirt on the floor, I pulled it on and buttoned it. The hardwood floor was chilly on my toes as I tiptoed down the stairs and padded through the spacious living area, following the delicious smells and sultry sound of a deep voice singing. I paused in the doorway of the kitchen, smiling at the sight of Dante, clad only in a pair of boxer briefs, maneuvering with incredible ease around a gourmet chef's kitchen. He remained lost in his own little world, completely oblivious to my presence, tasting whatever he was cooking as he sang along with an old Frank Sinatra tune. He turned from the stove and toward an island that had to be 12 feet long. When he noticed me in the doorway, he came to a stop, a smile tugging on his lips. "You're awake." "I am. Good. You need to eat. I hope you like veal." "Veal." I pushed off the door jamb, sauntering toward him as he poured red wine into 2 glasses. One thing was certain. Dante was spoiling me. Brock's kitchen skills were the equivalent of a 13-year-old. I was lucky if he knew how to boil water. I was a decent cook, but it was readily apparent I was no match for Dante. "Is that okay? If it's even half as good as the meal I had last night, I'll love it." He approached, gazing at me in a way that made adrenaline rush through me, a lightness in my chest. Lifting the hem of my borrowed shirt, he placed his hand on the small of my back, lowering his lips to mine. His kiss was gentle, unhurried, beautiful. "I like you in this," he said, eyeing his shirt. "Almost as much as I like you in nothing." "That can be arranged," I flirted. He released his hold on me, giving me a sly grin. "Oh, really?" "Really?" He stepped back, hardening his stare. "Take it off," keeping my eyes locked on his. I found the top button and unfastened it, my pace measured and sluggish. "Are you trying to tease me, Eleanor?" He crossed his arms in front of his chest, his biceps bulging. "Yes," I replied in a firm voice. "Well, don't," he barked, his tone harsh. A delicious shiver rolled over me. "I am not a patient man. I said to take it off, so take it off," giving him a demure look. I quickly unbuttoned the remainder of the shirt, allowing it to slide down my arms and fall at my feet. The bright lights in this room were unforgiving, allowing Dante to see all my imperfections. Instead of focusing on the fact that I didn't have a size 0 body or a gap between my thighs, as Brock often mentioned, Dante gazed upon me with more hunger, more need, more eagerness. His gaze softened, and he brought my body against his once more. "You're a masterpiece, Eleanor," he crooned, his tender voice at complete odds with the powerful, demanding man he was moments ago. His lips met mine, kissing me without reservation, grasping my face in his strong hands. He breathed into me as if he were giving me life. In that moment, I felt he was. The old Ellie had died the second she boarded that flight to Rome. Dante had brought me back to life. had given me a second chance at finally living. I ran my hands through his hair, trying to pull him closer. A groan tumbled from his mouth. He lifted me up, forcing my legs around his waist, carrying me to the large kitchen island. He set me down on the pristine white stone. He pulled his erection out of his briefs, rubbing it against my slit. "Are you on birth control?" "Yes," I answered. "Do you trust me?" "Yes," I said once more without hesitation, before I could utter anything else. He entered me, his motions steady. This was different than the last time. It was so much more primal, more intense, more intimate. It was slower, deeper, but so much more fulfilling. Closing my eyes, I wrapped my arms around his neck. "No, Eleanor," he said through his heavy breathing. "Keep them open. I want you to see me." He cupped my cheeks with both hands, locking my head in place. "I do see you." I stared into his eyes as he moved inside me, rocking my hips with the rhythm he set. "I see so much." This felt surreal, as if I were having an out-of-body experience. In fact, the past few days seemed like one beautiful dream, a dream I feared I'd wake up from at any minute to face the nightmare that had been my life. "Good." His lips whispered subtly against mine. I ran my hands up and down his back, feeling his muscles flex as he pushed into me, each thrust sharper, fuller, more satisfying than the last. With every flick of his tongue, every brush of his hand, every beat of his heart against mine, I spiraled deeper and deeper, his measured and well-choreographed movements bringing me closer to the precipice of falling over and crumbling before him. Too soon. That familiar sensation bubbled in my core, my release imminent. My muscles tensed and I bit my lip, trying to fight it. I didn't want this to end. Not yet. Not ever. "Let go. I want to feel you." His lips covered mine, our tongues a tangled web of need. His kiss was the final straw, and I quivered around him, moaning into his mouth. "God, I love how you feel when you come." His motions became more frenzied before he abruptly stopped. He grunted my name as he emptied inside me, trembling and jerking. Once our breathing was under control, he slowly pulled away, leaving a kiss on my nose. Opening a nearby drawer, he handed me a towel. "Dinner will be ready in about 15 minutes. If you want to clean up." I glanced at the clock on the wall. Dinner at midnight sounds a bit unconventional. What can I say? He winked. I'm a bit of an unconventional guy. He turned from me, using a towel to clean himself, before readjusting his boxer briefs. "If you'd like to shower, there's shampoo and conditioner in the master bathroom." I jumped down from the counter. "Care to join me?" I wiggled a brow at him. "I would love to." His eyes narrowed on me. "But this dinner won't cook itself. Next time. Now go." He swatted my ass playfully. "I'll have dinner set out when you return." Smiling, I retreated from the kitchen, giddy at the thought of next time with Dante. 49, the vault break. When I walked back downstairs after a quick shower and dressing in my sundress once more, I almost didn't recognize the place. Dante had dimmed the lighting in the dining area and set a few votive candles on the table. The light from the flame danced on the high walls. Soft music played in the background, the aroma of the veal he had prepared making my stomach growl. I didn't think I'd ever been so hungry before in my life, and not just for food, either. As I made my way toward the table, Dante rounded the corner from the kitchen, still gloriously shirtless and wearing only his boxer briefs. He carried 2 pristine white dishes, setting one down at the head of the table and the other in front of the chair, catty-corner to it. A smile lit up his face when he noticed me. "How do you feel?" "Refreshed." "Good. I hope you're hungry." He pulled out a chair, holding it for me. I didn't recall Brock ever doing that for me, although I was pretty certain I'd seen him do it for some of his wealthier female donors. "Starving," I said, bearing my memories. I needed to stop comparing everything Brock did or didn't do to Dante. I came here to find my fresh start. I'd never be able to do that if I constantly dwelled on the past. "You should be. You barely ate today. Or for the past 6 months." His fingers skimmed my shoulder blades as he pushed my chair in, then took the seat at the head of the table. There's nothing sexier than a woman who enjoys her food. And there's nothing sexier than a man who knows how to cook. I winked, placing the cloth napkin in my lap. I do hope you enjoy the veal. This is one of my favorite dishes. He picked up his knife and fork and sliced into it. I did the same, the meat practically falling off the bone. I brought it to my mouth, the flavor of veal mixed with what I presumed to be a rich coffee and red wine sauce dancing on my tongue. Dante took having a post-coital snack to a level I wasn't expecting. How could I go back to the real world after this? It's delicious, I said. I've never had veal like this before. It's usually really chewy. Because too many chefs don't appreciate it. They try to prepare it as they do steak or lamb, and you can't do that. Every meat should be treated and respected for its distinct characteristics. I reached for my wine glass, taking a sip. It was a robust red, the perfect pairing to such an exquisitely prepared meat. What made you want to become a chef? He took another bite of his veal, then washed it down with some wine. Swirling his glass, he looked at me, considering my question. I don't know if it was any one thing. He said finally, like I mentioned last night, I do believe in such ridiculous ideas as fate. He smirked, and I bit my lower lip. I truly believe I had some predetermined destiny that this was the path I was meant to take. Growing up, my father wasn't exactly part of my life. He was an American serviceman stationed here. My mother loved him. He said he loved her too, until she got pregnant. That's when she learned he had a wife and 2 kids back in the States. Oh God. I met his eyes, offering him a compassionate smile. I'm sorry. It's okay. My mom worked as a server at one of the restaurants in town when I was growing up. She would go in early to watch the cooks do all their prep work. Sometimes she'd sit in the corner and observe them prepare orders as they came in. She studied their style, their technique, how they tasted the different sauces. When she came home, she'd practice. I guess I picked up on a lot of it. When I was old enough to work, I got a job bussing tables at a local restaurant. I slowly worked my way up the chain and soon found myself in the kitchen. You never went to culinary school, I asked? I eventually did, but I'd already amassed a great deal of knowledge. Culinary school simply helped me hone those skills. Well, it certainly paid off, although I would have been just as happy with grilled cheese or something like that for a midnight snack. I took another bite of my veal. You deserve much better than that. Eleanor, he responded in his deep, sensual tone. As long as you're with me, you'll only have the best, nothing less. Swallowing hard at the sincerity in his voice and eyes, I couldn't stop my next question from falling off my tongue. Why me? Excuse me, he cocked his head. You could have any woman you want. Dante, why did you agree to my proposition? Even after I told you I was somewhat inexperienced, I knew this was probably not the right time to have this conversation, if there ever was a right time. But the question had been in the back of my mind all evening, nagging at me. I couldn't help but wonder whether he had some ulterior motive, other than getting laid. You're a beautiful woman, Eleanor. Why wouldn't I want to be with you? So you do this with every beautiful woman you meet. He laughed politely, shaking his head. Certainly not. I'm away from home more than half of the year. In my experience, most women my age are looking for something more long-term than I can give them. And I wasn't. I placed my hands in my lap, avoiding his eyes, chewing on my bottom lip. I couldn't help but suddenly feel ashamed. What had possessed me to proposition a complete stranger to have sex with me, and then let him come inside me without a condom on? What was wrong with me? Pushing away from the table, I abruptly stood. I should probably get going. I hurried away and darted toward the living room, rushing to leave before Dante could convince me otherwise. I was fooling myself to think I could be the type of person to have a meaningless fling with someone I'd never see again after I left this beautiful country. I never should have listened to Mila's crazy idea that I sleep with some hot Italian man. I was trying to figure out who I was as a person. But this couldn't be it. Could it? Grabbing my purse off the coffee table, I approached the front door. I came to an abrupt stop when I saw Dante standing in front of it, his stance wide, his arms crossed. Before I could say anything in protest, He cupped my face in his strong hands and pressed his lips against mine, greedily kissing me, erasing any shred of doubt from my subconscious. "Don't go," he whispered against my mouth. "Don't run. Don't let everything you were taught your entire life dictate how you should feel right now." His eyes were intense as he stared into mine. "I get it. I've been around Catholic guilt my entire life. It's one of the most difficult things to come to terms with. But I get the feeling Catholic guilt has nothing on the shit you've been peddled for years." I blinked, doing everything I could to fight back the tears forming in my eyes from the sincerity of his expression and words. "The truth is, I don't do this with many women. In fact, I can't remember the last time I invited a woman into my home." "Then why me?" I squeaked out. "Was I just a pity fuck? Not even close." "Eleanor," he answered with determination in his tone. "You caught my eye the second I noticed you in the first-class lounge at the airport. I couldn't believe my luck when I saw you board the same flight, then sit in the empty seat across the aisle from me. You have no idea how many times I wanted to strike up a conversation with you, but you seemed lost in your own thoughts. All day yesterday, as I went about my business, I couldn't stop thinking about you and our all-too-brief exchange on the plane." I swallowed hard, my knees feeling like jelly, always able to read my body. He placed his hand on the small of my back, supporting me. "I thought my brain was playing tricks on me when you walked into my restaurant." "Eleanor, I honestly did. I kept blinking, convinced I'd finally lost my mind, blaming it on the jet lag. Then I heard you talk and knew it was you, that you were real and not simply a manifestation of my deepest desires. You may think fate doesn't exist, that it's something people believe in so they don't have to be accountable for their actions. But I am certain, beyond a shadow of a doubt, it wasn't a mere coincidence that, out of the hundreds upon hundreds of restaurants in Rome, you walked straight into mine." Overwhelmed with the urgency and ardor with which he spoke, a lone tear fell down my cheek. He kissed it away. "Why did you say you would only use me? You said it yourself." He sighed. "We live two separate lives. You'll leave Rome when your time here is over and go back to your life. But I'm not going to think about that. Not right now. Not while I still have you." He licked his lips, the heat of his eyes cutting me open and bleeding me dry. "Do I still have you?" I grew breathless at his question. It could have meant so many things. All I knew was my time in Rome was growing shorter every minute. I needed to stop worrying about what my parents would say if they knew what I'd been doing these past several hours. I was 28 years old. It was about time I finally did what I wanted to do, what made me feel good. Being with Dante made me feel better than I had in years, perhaps ever. Briefly closing my eyes, I drew in a deep breath before returning my gaze to his. "I'm still yours," I murmured. A smile tugged on his lips. He pressed his mouth against mine, his kiss simple, reserved, but still enthralling in all the ways I never thought possible. "Stay," he pleaded, pulling my body into his. "Okay," I answered with no hesitation on my part. I felt more comfortable and at home in this man's embrace than anyone I'd known for years. "And not just tonight. Stay with me until you go home." I stepped back, blinking repeatedly. "You're only in Rome for a short time. You need a tour guide." He grinned a wicked grin. "Consider me at your disposal." "And what?" "In return, I'll be at your disposal." I raised a brow, smirking. "It would be a rather nice benefit. But that's not why I want you to stay." "Then why do you—" "I have no idea," he answered with earnest, his expression becoming serious once more. "I'll be perfectly honest and tell you I've slept with more than my fair share of women." I narrowed my gaze on him, crossing my arms over my chest. "Safely," he interjected quickly. "I know you have no reason to actually believe me, but you're the first woman I've ever had sex with without a condom. I'm clean." "I believe you." My response surprised me. I barely knew him, but I trusted him more than I did Brock or my own parents. With them, there was always some ulterior motive for their decisions. That was probably why I had been convinced Dante must have had a reason for wanting to be with me, too. It seemed so foreign an idea that anyone would just want to be with me for me. I always kicked them out after we screwed. I certainly never made them dinner here. If they wanted my cooking, They had to go to one of my restaurants to get it. I furrowed my brow, not understanding. Then why did you do all this for me? It's as much a mystery to me as it is to you. Around you, I'm not myself, but in a good way. You bring out a side of me I thought I'd buried years ago. I'm not sure my staying is a good idea. I didn't expect— Oh, I agree with you, he interrupted. Make no mistake about that. I think it's an absolutely horrible idea. The more time I spend with you, the harder it will be to let you go. I know I will have no option but to do just that. But I know I'll regret it if I let you leave me right now. If I don't do everything in my power to spend every minute I can with you. I pulled my bottom lip between my teeth. I wondered if I could do this. If I could spend the week with Dante and be able to go home with my heart intact. In the span of one evening, he'd already opened my eyes and heart to things I didn't think possible. I could only imagine what he'd be able to do over the next week. There was only one way to find out. I'll have to go back to the hotel to check out and get my things. A brilliant smile crossing his face, he tugged me against his sculpted torso. That can most certainly be arranged. Chapter 8. A subtle whisper of a warm hand on my cheek stirred me from a dreamless slumber, and I opened my eyes to see Dante sitting on the edge of the bed. The way he gazed at me made me feel desired, wanted, valued, a welcome change. "Hey," I breathed. "Hey, what time is it?" I asked in a scratchy voice, noticing he'd already showered and dressed in a dashing gray suit. It was perfectly tailored to that beautiful body that brought me more pleasure than I thought possible throughout the night. "A little after 9. I have a few meetings I need to attend today, but I want you to make yourself at home here. I sent Antonio to pick up a few things for you to wear for the time being until you have a chance to go back to your hotel. Antonio will take you there as well." "Is he like your personal driver?" "He works for me. During your stay here, what's mine is yours. So he will be at your disposal. If there's anywhere you'd like to go, he'll be happy to accompany you." "I can certainly get used to this," I said with a grin, stretching in his bed. The duvet fell slightly, revealing my naked breast. Dante's eyes shifted to my exposed skin, his gaze heated, carnal, wild. Licking his lips, he lowered his mouth to mine. "Do you have any idea how difficult you're making it for me to leave you like this? Then don't." I closed my eyes, pulling his head closer, kissing him. His hand brushed against my nipple, pushing the duvet off me. "How do you feel this morning?" "Horny." He lazily dragged his fingers down my torso, leaving electricity in its wake. "What should we do about that?" "I have a few ideas." I shifted my legs apart as the heat of his touch grew closer and closer to my thighs. When he felt between my legs, his breathing grew heavy, a look of unmatched need forming on his features. "You're so ready for me, aren't you?" "Yes," I moaned, bucking my hips as he ran his fingers down my slit, spreading my wetness. "I need to feel you." "You are feeling me," he shot back flirtatiously. "I need you to fuck me. And I would love to fuck you." He abruptly removed his hand. "But not right now." Stepping back, he readjusted the cufflinks on his shirt, ignoring the disbelief on my face. "I will see you later. Eleanor, we have a long night ahead of us, so be sure to relax a little." As he was about to leave, he glanced back at me. "You didn't happen to bring an evening gown with you, did you?" I furrowed my brow, still frustrated that he was going to leave me in my state of arousal. "No. I didn't exactly pack appropriately for this trip in the first place. If you look at my suitcase, you'd think I was here on a business trip." "Very well." He pulled his phone out of his pocket and typed on it. "After you retrieve your belongings from your hotel, I'll have Antonio take you to see my personal shopper. Get anything you'd like. You'll certainly need an evening gown. Anything else you didn't pack, be sure to get as well. They'll put it on my tab. Capisci?" Why I sat up in bed. "Where are we going?" "I have a prior commitment this evening and would like you to accompany me. An opening of a new exhibit at a museum here." He stepped toward me, placing a chaste kiss on my cheek. "I'll be thinking of you all day." Then he turned from me, closing the bedroom door behind him, drawing in a breath. I took a moment to collect my thoughts, still feeling like this was all a dream. It was surreal to think just 48 hours ago, I'd met a handsome stranger on a flight from LA to Rome and was now in his bed after committing to spending the next week with him. And I would be going to the premiere of an art exhibit with him tonight. And he was buying me an evening gown, too. An uncontrollable grin building on my lips. I stood from the bed, my muscles sore from the previous evening's calisthenics. I hoped a long bath would help them recover. I padded to the far side of the room where a dresser sat, several shopping bags set in front of it. Grabbing one, I began sifting through the contents. There was underwear, a few sundresses, jeans, and some light tops. When I opened the last bag, I blushed as I pulled out several lacy negligées. All the clothes must have cost Dante a small fortune. I found a thigh-length silk robe and wrapped it around my body, then went into the bathroom, turning on the water in the elaborate marble tub. As steam filled the room, I stood in front of the mirror and looked at my reflection. It was like a completely different woman stared back. In just one night, Dante had opened my eyes, had shown me it was okay to succumb to my desires, that there was nothing wrong with exploring my needs and wants. There was only one more thing I needed to do to make my transformation into the new Eleanor complete. Towards the vault break. Refreshed and relaxed after a long bath, I dressed in a pair of jeans and a billowy white top, courtesy of Dante. I found my purse and retrieved my cell phone. At some point, I needed to check in with Mila, at least to let her know I was still alive. I headed down the stairs, the apartment hauntingly quiet, and entered the kitchen, hoping Dante's coffee maker wouldn't be too complex for me to handle. Thankfully, he had a one-cup brewer nearly identical to the one I was accustomed to back home. Coffee in hand, I walked back into the living room and toward the French doors leading to the veranda. Pushing them open, I emerged into the brilliant Italian sun, allowing it to warm my face. It felt like I was a world away, somewhere none of my troubles could find me. Blowing out a contented breath, I headed to one of the cushioned lounge chairs and sat down, placing my mug on a small table beside it. As I relaxed into the chair, which was more comfortable than I thought possible for a piece of outdoor furniture, I closed my eyes, allowing the sounds and smells of Rome to consume me, body and mind. After a few more sips of strong coffee, I powered my phone on, steeling myself to face the daunting reminders of the real world. I hovered over Mila's contact, about to hit call. But something stopped me. It was completely irresponsible of me to leave my best friend in the dark, considering the burden I'd put on her when I fled the country hours before my own wedding. My fingers simply refused to hit the button, as if an outside force was at work, knowing the last thing I needed was a reminder of my life back home. I'd boarded that plane fully aware my actions would probably cost me everything: my family, my home, my job. Nothing Mila had to say could change what I'd done. Resolved to remain in my fantasy world as long as possible, I shot her a quick text, letting her know I was still alive and was enjoying some much-needed radio silence. If anyone would understand, she would. As I was about to put my phone back into my pocket, a thought popped into my head. To say I was curious about Dante was an understatement. He'd shared a little about his past with me, but I was hungry for more. Opening the internet browser app on my phone, I entered his name into the search bar, expecting to get only a few hits, mostly because he owned a restaurant. When pages upon pages of links came back, including a Wikipedia profile and IMDb page, my jaw dropped, my mind reeling. What the? With a furrowed brow, I clicked the Wikipedia link. To the right of the screen was a photo of Dante in a white chef's coat, smiling wide for the camera. Dante Luciano, I muttered to myself, closing my eyes. Fuck. I didn't know why I hadn't put it all together sooner. I knew his first name was Dante, and his last name was Luciano. But I didn't realize he was the Dante Luciano. No wonder people seemed to stare and take his photo everywhere we went. Everyone in town seeming to know him. Hell, he was well known around the world. I scrolled through the article, which reiterated what he had told me last night. He came from somewhat rough beginnings. His family didn't have much money, so he went to work early in life, first as a busboy, then moving up to the kitchen staff. He enrolled in one of the most prestigious culinary schools in Italy, but had to work long hours to afford it. To help him through those long days, he gradually turned to drugs. After a few years, his addiction had gotten to the point where he'd end up dead if he didn't seek help. Finally clean after a lengthy stay in a rehab facility, he finished culinary school, then was recruited to work as the executive chef at a variety of premier restaurants in Rome, Paris, and eventually New York City. While in New York, he wrote his first book, a very tongue-in-cheek account of what was wrong with the food industry in the United States. It garnered him a great deal of praise from activists who had been pushing for better truth in labeling our foods. However, it also made him numerous enemies, including my own father and Brock, both of whom had campaigned at some point in their political careers on the promise of less regulation across the board, including in the food industry. I felt like I had hit the jackpot. Not only had I skipped out on my wedding, but less than 72 hours later, I was sleeping with a man Brock probably viewed with absolute disgust. I brimmed with satisfaction at the thought before returning my attention to the article. The book made Dante Luciano a household name, and he soon entertained offers to host different TV series, cooking shows, and even some documentaries. While he offered his expertise to the occasional film project about the food industry, it wasn't until about 5 years ago that he signed a deal to host his own television series. I'd even watched it a few times, which was probably why he had seemed familiar to me. It wasn't just a show about food. While food was always involved in some way, he used it as a vehicle to explore different customs, heading to different countries, showing his viewers how people in various cultures lived. I continued scrolling, learning he had made several wise business decisions and was now worth well over 9 figures. He owned multiple vineyards, restaurants in a handful of countries, and even a few hotels. With all his success, he was able to do something he'd always dreamed of but never thought possible. He bought his mother her very own restaurant. "Excuse me," a male voice said. I snapped my head toward the French doors, seeing Antonio standing there. I hastily locked the home screen of my phone, hiding it from him so he couldn't see I had been reading up on his boss. "Per Signor Luciano's instructions, I'm here to take you to collect your things, then to see his personal shopper. Are you ready now?" "Signorina." "Si." "Of course." Standing, I slid my phone into my pocket, grabbing my now empty coffee mug. I followed Antonio back into the apartment, and he closed the door behind me. "I'll take that for you." He reached for the mug. "I just need to grab my bag, then I'll be ready." "Certamente, take your time." I hurried up the stairs, found my purse, then glanced at my reflection in the mirror one last time. After applying a hint of gloss I luckily had with me, I headed back down the stairs. "Ready?" Antonio asked when I reappeared in the living area. "Yes," I answered, then paused. "Antonio, do you know of a salon that would be able to fit me in before this evening?" He smiled cordially as he held the door open for me. "I believe we can have that arranged." "Signorina, people in this town tend to bend over backwards to cater to Signor Luciano." I'm starting to understand that. Chapter 9. Erased the zipper of the black evening gown I'd procured earlier in the day, then stepped into a pair of 3-inch strapped silver heels. I nearly had a heart attack when I saw the price tag and did the currency conversion in my head. Antonio had assured me the cost didn't matter. After realizing who Dante was, I didn't feel as uneasy as I originally had. Still, the bill was staggering. As if I hadn't been spoiled enough with all the shopping, Antonio had arranged for me to be pampered at a local spa, where I was treated to a massage, manicure, and pedicure, then had my hair cut, colored, and styled, as well as my makeup expertly applied. I felt a little like Julia Roberts in Pretty Woman, minus the whole prostitute thing. Staring at my reflection in the mirror, I blinked repeatedly. I couldn't remember the last time I had dark hair. I felt lighter, and it wasn't simply because I'd cut a few inches off my hair, so it now rested just past my shoulders. Changing the color severed one of the final chains trapping me to my old life. I smoothed my hands over the long black dress with a lace and jewel overlay. It was fitted, a slit exposing my leg to mid-thigh. The sweetheart neckline emphasized my chest. Dante's personal shopper suggested I add more emphasis with a diamond necklace that lay right in my cleavage. It certainly did just that. I had a feeling Dante wouldn't be able to keep his hands off me once he saw me. The sound of footsteps in the living room tore me away from my reflection. Grinning, I hastily finished the look with a pair of matching earrings, then grabbed my clutch, butterflies fluttering in my stomach. Dante had been gone all day, and I looked forward to finally seeing him. I didn't want to admit I'd missed him. That would make leaving here at the end of my trip harder than it needed to be. Still, I'd thought about him more than I should have over the course of the day. I straightened my spine and carefully made my way down the steps, my expression falling when Antonio stood in the living room. I apologize. Signor Luciano's meeting ran late. He asked me to escort you to the museum. He will meet you there. He held his elbow out for me, trying to hide my disappointment. I nodded, offering him a smile. I hooked my arm through his and allowed him to lead me out of the apartment. You look beautiful this evening, Signorina, he said as we stepped into the elevator. Thankfully, it had been repaired. I didn't know if I could walk down 6 flights of stairs in these heels. Grazie, Antonio. Prego. Within moments, I was sitting comfortably in the back seat of the dark sedan as Antonio navigated through the hectic streets of Rome. When I decided to walk out on my nuptials, if anyone had told me I'd be on my way to an opening night gala at a museum with Dante Luciano, the culinary world's bad boy, I would have laughed, then asked to have a bit of whatever they were on. I found myself constantly pinching myself, thinking it was all a dream, but no matter how hard I pinched, I didn't wake up. I hoped I wouldn't have to anytime soon. After a 15-minute drive through heavy traffic, Antonio was waved into a cordoned-off area, then came to a stop in front of an impressive building with a white facade. A red carpet ran up a set of wide stairs, what appeared to be the who's who of Italy, stopping to pose for photographers calling out their names. A man dressed in a black tuxedo with coattails approached the car and opened the door. Helping me out, he said something in Italian, but I was in a daze, taking in the celebratory and upscale atmosphere surrounding me. I had no idea how I was supposed to find Dante in the sea of evening gowns and formal tuxedos. I gingerly stepped away from the sedan, glancing at it with a hint of longing as I watched Antonio drive away. For a split second, I wished I were still in it, now feeling out of my element. Throughout my life, I'd attended more formal functions than I cared to admit, but everyone typically knew who I was. Here, I was a nobody. Wasn't that supposed to be a good thing? Turning to face the stairs leading to the entrance of the museum, all the breath left me when my eyes fell on Dante wearing a crisp black tuxedo, standing at the top. The few times I'd been with him, he'd always been dressed somewhat formally. But Dante in a tuxedo was a different look altogether, one that made me want to haul him to the nearest dark space so we could have some privacy. Careful not to trip, I slowly made my way up the steps, my eyes locked with his. As I approached, he held his hand out toward me, my lips parting. I reached for him, completely caught off guard when he instantly pulled me into his arms, capturing my mouth with the type of kiss I thought should be reserved for private, a slave to his touch. I opened for him, his tongue tangling with mine. I didn't need words to know he was pleased to see me. He exhibited it with the way he held me, the way he looked at me as if he were ready to devour me, the way he had no problem kissing me with such greediness surrounded by a sea of people. He gradually pulled back and ran a finger through a few ringlets of my now dark hair cascading past my shoulders. "You changed your hair," he remarked in that deep baritone I knew I'd hear calling my name in my dreams for months to come. "It's time to finally be me again. It's stunning. You're stunning." He caressed my lips with his thumb, then stepped away. "I'm a sucker for a beautiful brunette," he murmured in my ear, the heat of his breath sending a delicious shiver down my spine. Placing his hand on the small of my back, he steered me through the throng of people. I couldn't help but marvel at Dante as he seamlessly interacted with everyone who approached us, all of them sizing me up, probably wondering who I was. I didn't understand much of what they said, but the way he maintained a possessive hold on me made it apparent to anyone I was here with him. As we headed up another short set of stairs toward the front doors of the museum, I stole a glimpse of him, only to be met by his fiery gaze. I tried to pretend I wasn't affected by the way he admired me. So much heat, so much want, so much yearning. It was an impossible task. I opened my mouth, hoping to break the sexual tension with friendly conversation, but words seemed to fail me. I considered telling him I knew who he was, but why did that matter? Maybe he kept it from me for a reason, just as I never made it clear who I was. Judging by all the people here, I said when the fire in his eyes felt like it was scalding my skin, this event must be a pretty big deal. It's more a political thing than anything else. I don't enjoy having to put on a smile and pretend I like all these fake people who are just here to be seen among the who's who of Italy. Sometimes, though, you must do it to grease the wheels, so to speak. He snaked his arm around me, pulling me close. But having a beautiful woman with me makes it quite bearable. I tilted my head and met his eyes, smirking. Oh, so being with me is only bearable at best. Curving toward me, his lips brushed mine. I don't know if I'd say that, but I do know after spending the day without you, being away from you is quite unbearable. He nuzzled my neck, inhaling my scent. Tell me you thought about me as much as I did you. I swallowed hard at the fever in his voice. I couldn't get you out of my mind, I admitted softly. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined you beside me, or on top of me, or behind me. I didn't know what had come over me. The old Ellie never would have spoken so boldly, so perverse in public. But Dante had brought out a side of me I never knew existed, and I wanted to explore it even more. I couldn't stop thinking about the next time you'd fuck me. His hand on my waist tightened, and his jaw clenched. I rubbed my body against him, his erection becoming quite noticeable. Do you have any idea how much I'd love nothing more than to do just that at this very moment? I faintly made out the flash of camera lights around us, but I tuned it all out. For all I knew, we were alone in our own little world. That was the effect Dante Luciano seemed to have on me. Whenever I was with him, I forgot everything else, especially after seeing you in this dress. He ran his finger down the line of my throat, his thumb grazing my breast. My breaths came in short pants, every inch of my body alive with need. I can't wait to rip it off you later. Then why don't we go see this exhibit so we can get home sooner rather than later? A devilish smile crawled across his lips. A woman after my own heart. He placed a full kiss on my mouth, then pulled away, offering me his elbow, holding onto him with one arm. I allowed him to lead me through the front doors of the museum. Even more people filled the cavernous lobby. High-top tables covered in black cloth were set up. Women dressed in designer gowns and men wearing tuxedos laughed and gritted fake smiles, pretending to actually like each other. As soon as it ended, insults would probably be slung like gunfire. What exactly is the exhibit everyone's here to celebrate? I asked, as Dante took a few glasses of champagne from a roaming server, handing one to me. A bunch of artwork temporarily on loan from the Louvre. Apparently, they went missing during World War II and have only recently been recovered. The art world thought they were gone forever. There are a few Monets, some by Degas, Van Gogh. It's a pretty big find. Wow, I breathed. The artwork had to go through a restoration process. As you can imagine, none of it was stored as it should have been for the past 70+ years. So some of the pieces had deteriorated. Thankfully, several art restorers were able to bring them back to life. Do you enjoy art? I asked, studying him. I can certainly appreciate it, he answered. Art tells a story. It's an important part of a nation's culture. I agree. Too many people dismiss it, especially now that we're living in this technological age. They'd rather sit on the couch and watch football than go to a museum and see priceless works of art. Proof of the detrimental effect of cuts to art education. I don't know how it is over here, but you see it too often back in the States. School systems make huge cuts to the art and music programs, sometimes eliminating them altogether, but they'll spend a fortune on sports. That's why nights like this are important to me. As much as I hate having to put on a monkey suit and interact with some of these people, I still make it a point to make an appearance when I can. All the money they raise tonight goes to art education in the schools. It's something I feel very strongly about. I gave him an understanding smile as we made our way to a large room off the south wing of the museum where tonight's exhibit was set up. Stepping inside, I noticed the atmosphere was more subdued than out in the lobby. Framed artwork hung on the walls, each with a nameplate below it, detailing the work and a brief history. Display cases filled the center of the room, some containing sculptures, others with jewels and even a few journals. People discussed the artwork in hushed tones, but I remained quiet. I didn't feel the need to pollute the air with unnecessary conversation. As we continued through the large space, I couldn't believe such magnificent pieces of artwork had almost been lost forever. It seemed like such a disgrace. I'd grown up in a family that put little value on the arts, but I'd somehow formed an appreciation for it, probably thanks to my nanny. The farther into the exhibit we went, the closer Dante stood to me. At some point, his hand found its way to my waist, his thumb lightly feathering against my hip bone. It was such a simple touch, but it sent a current straight to my core. "This dress is driving me fucking crazy," he murmured into my neck as we continued past painting after painting, only stopping briefly to marvel at the beauty and magnificence surrounding us. I was no longer paying much attention to the art. The only masterpiece I cared about was the one standing beside me. And probably every other guy here, too. They're all going to go home and fantasize about you as they're fucking their wives. I turned to him. I doubt that. He slowly shook his head, his eyes growing hooded as he backed me into a corner. I've seen a few guys eye fucking you all night. They're probably imagining what it would feel like to have those killer legs wrapped around them. And they're all jealous because I'm the only lucky bastard here who knows what that's like, palming my back. He forced my body against his, my breath leaving me. My chest rose and fell as his free hand discreetly traveled down my side, then disappeared between us. His lips whispered against mine, and I bit back a gasp when he pushed my panties aside. "Tell me, Eleanor, did your ex ever go down on you?" He thrust a finger inside, crushing me into him even more. I looked around, thinking someone would see, but no one did. There were too many bodies in the room for anyone to pay attention to two people tucked out of the way. For all they knew, we were having a quiet conversation about the art, particularly based on the serious and unaffected look on Dante's face. "No," I whimpered as he massaged my insides. "Has anyone ever gone down on you?" He brushed his thumb against my clit, slowly fucking me with his fingers. I felt lightheaded. I knew this was wrong, but the forbidden nature of Dante's hand between my legs, in a room where hundreds of people could see, only heightened my arousal. All my inhibitions were tossed out the window, along with the modesty I had ingrained into my brain for years. I'd become a slave to Dante's touch. I'd do anything he asked, as long as he kept making me feel as good as he had last night, as good as I felt now. "No," I moaned, my lips parting. "Does it turn you on that I'm touching you like this with all these people around?" "Yes." My grip on him tightened, my chest constricting as I fought against the orgasm that was coming far too quickly. "You're close, aren't you?" "God, yes," I breathed. He abruptly removed his hand, leaving me a panting mess of hormones. "You've got to be kidding me." I formed my hands into fists, exasperated. I'd lost count of the number of times he'd left me wanting over the past several days. A wicked grin on his lips. He clasped my hand in his and tugged me from the room. His strides were long as he stalked down the corridor toward the lobby, the murmur of polite voices and ambient music growing louder. I had trouble keeping up with him, a man obviously on a mission. Instead of heading through the lobby and out of the museum, he continued down another darkened corridor. "Dante, where?" He stopped outside a door and opened it, revealing a family restroom. Yanking me inside, he quickly locked the door, then faced me, a feral look about him. "I need to have you now." He gripped my hips and, in one swift move, placed me on the long counter, spreading my legs with his rough hands. Fire in his eyes, he ripped my panties from me. I could only assume there was going to be a mark there later. He kneeled on the marble tile of the bathroom that appeared as if it belonged in a design catalog and not a public place. Before I could say anything, his tongue traced circles around my slit, sucking gently. Holy shit! I exhaled, wishing there was something for me to hold on to. His mouth was warm, sensual, setting me on fire. Heat flamed my skin as I moved against him, chasing my orgasm. I ran my fingers through his hair, holding my breath as I climbed higher and higher, shaking and writhing when I could no longer fight my body's response to him. The need that had been building all day, sending me to the brink. I hadn't even had a chance to come down from my orgasm before he stood and hastily unzipped his pants. He dragged me to the edge of the counter and slammed into me, every muscle in my body tense. I hooked my arms around his neck as he fucked me hard in the bathroom of a beautiful museum in Italy. This was so wrong, but I only wanted more, faster, harder, rougher. As if able to read my mind, he drove into me with even more intensity, more depravity, more primal need. He wrapped my hair around his hand, yanking my head back. I screamed out, not caring who heard us. "Come on, Eleanor," he grunted. "I want you to go again." "I don't think I can." I panted in a husky voice, my chest heaving, my mind spinning. "I know you can." He released his grip on my hair, then pulled out, lifting me. He spun me around, forcing my stomach onto the counter as he raised my dress to my waist, then entered me again. "Suck," he ordered, thrusting his index finger into my mouth. I willingly obeyed, teasing him with my tongue until he abruptly pulled his hand away. "If this is too much, tell me and I'll stop." His voice was tender, caring, warm. "If what's too much? This," he said, then slipped his slick finger into my ass, continuing to push into me from behind. My eyelids fluttered closed as I moved with the delicate motion he set. This was so new to me, but so wanted. "You like that?" "Yes," I whimpered, my legs trembling. "Has anyone ever done this with you before?" "No." I swallowed hard. "You have no idea what a turn-on it is, knowing I'm the first." "Oh God," I moaned, another orgasm ravaging through me, taking me by complete surprise. "Fuck," he hissed. "I love it when you clench around me like that." He removed his finger and increased his rhythm, releasing inside me with a strangled groan. Our bodies quivering, our breathing ragged, we remained motionless. When several long moments had passed and both of our racing hearts had begun to slow, he pulled out, then helped me straighten. With an unfocused smile, I turned to face him, sated. I stood on my toes, raking my fingers through his mussed-up hair. His tongue traced my lower lip, begging for permission to enter. Our mouths locked, the taste of me on him an aphrodisiac. "That was... wow," I exhaled. "Yeah, it was..." He released his hold on me, adjusting himself and zipping up his pants. "I suppose we should probably rejoin the party, though, huh? At least for a little bit longer." He agreed. "Fine," I huffed playfully, then reached for a few paper towels to clean up. "Don't!" Dante snatched my wrist, his lips curving into a wicked grin. "I want my cum dripping down your leg, reminding you that, until you get on that plane in 1 week, I'm the only one allowed to do this to you." My heart rate skyrocketed. It sounded so perverse, so demeaning. But I found myself even more turned on by the notion. I just hoped we would leave the gala sooner rather than later. I'd just been fucked harder than I ever had in my life, yet I still craved more. Dante had awoken the beast inside me. Chapter 10. Rough skin trailed along my shoulder blades as I lay on my stomach, basking in Dante's luxurious sheets. I didn't think I'd ever spent so much time naked in my life, even as a newborn. After leaving the museum, we'd barely left the bedroom for the past 24 hours. Dante even postponed a few meetings he had scheduled so he could spend the entire day with me. He had a voracious appetite, one I was only too happy to match. I'd lost count of the number of orgasms he'd given me. It was almost like it was his mission to make it so I could barely walk onto that plane when the time came. Sadly, that time was inching closer and closer. "Morning," I murmured as his stubble grazed my skin. "Buongiorno, mia cara Eleanor." I closed my eyes. I love when you speak Italian to me. Sei bella, molto bella. He traced circles along my spine, and I closed my eyes, tuning out everything except Dante's touch. With each minute that passed, with each brush of his skin against mine, with each whisper of his desire in my ear, I fell deeper and deeper into something I couldn't describe. Clutching my hips, he flipped me onto my back, pushing a few tendrils of hair behind my ear. His touch was delicate as his fingers traced my face. Has anyone told you how beautiful you are first thing in the morning? No. I swallowed hard at the sincerity in his eyes. The fiery and carnal look I'd grown accustomed to had been replaced by something else. You are breathtaking. Eleanor, he murmured, his tongue trailing over my bottom lip. He pressed his mouth to mine, the exchange soft and sweet, a brush of his hand, a sweet word, a kiss. That was all I needed to crumble before this man I swore I wouldn't fall for. But with each brush of his hand, each sweet word, each kiss, I was breaking that promise to myself. I wanted to curse life for being so unfair. I'd always wondered how it would feel to be treasured and loved. Life decided to play a cruel trick on me and finally show me that in a man who could never be mine, there was no future with Dante. His life was here, in Rome. Mine was in California, or at least the pieces that remained of it were there. I should have walked away from Dante after our first night. I should leave now, but I couldn't. I was drawn to him like a plant to sunlight. I needed him for my own survival. Without him, I feared my soul would wither and die. I raked my hands down his sculpted back, pulling him closer. The way his muscles rippled and bulged under my hands flamed my need for him. Do you want me? He whispered against my neck. Yes, Dante. Leaning back, he rubbed his erection against me, then slowly entered, filling me. He flexed toward me, a look of peace washing over him as he pushed deep before pulling back. He repeated the same slow motion over and over, each gentle thrust more fulfilling, more thrilling, more enthralling than the previous. I hooked my legs around his waist, reaching up and forcing his lips against mine. A spark ignited in my core as he moved inside me. This was different from every other time. It had always been fast, rough, hard. It was as if Dante could read my mind, knew I'd developed feelings for him. Despite trying to remain detached, I'd spent the past 10 years with Brock, yet I never cared for him this way. How could I possibly have such strong feelings for someone I'd only known for a few short days? It didn't seem possible. Harder, I begged. Dante met my eyes. Please, I added. He lowered his mouth to my chest, his teeth grazing my nipple. Not yet. Eleanor, you feel so good like this. A shiver rolled over him when I ran my fingers through his hair. He grabbed my hand, placing a kiss on my palm. God, I love being inside you, filling you, knowing I can give you so much pleasure. I tightened my legs around his waist, moving with the gentle rhythm he set. He grasped a wrist in each of his hands and pressed them against the mattress by my head. I yearned to touch him, to run my fingers through his hair, to dig my nails into his back. I need to feel you, I pleaded, my hands aching with need. You do feel me, he grunted out, tightening his hold on my wrists. My skin burned, a subtle pain shooting through me. More, I breathed, closing my eyes. He clamped his teeth on my neck, his rhythm still slow and deliberate as he marked me. Harder, I begged, gritting my teeth, bucking my hips, a storm brewing in his eyes. He finally relented and drove into me harder, rougher, his hands gripping my wrists even tighter. This was what I wanted, what I needed. Only Dante could give it to me. My vision became hazy, and I fell over the edge, crying out Dante's name as waves of ecstasy washed over me. Oh, Eleanor, crushing his lips to mine. He forced his tongue into my mouth as he found his own release. He let go of my wrists, and I clutched his face in my hands, giving him everything I could, my heart, my soul, my love. Our frenzied kiss grew soft, tender, delicate. I wrapped my arms around his neck, wishing we could always stay like this. That simply wasn't in the cards. If there were such a thing as fate, She was a cruel bitch. Too soon. He pulled back, placing a light kiss on my nose, smiling down at me with such adoration. His eyes wandered to the clock on the nightstand and he groaned. I have to get ready. I have a few appointments this morning. I can't cancel them again. Will you be okay for a few hours? I'll make it as quick as possible. Then I promise we'll go do something. I can take you to see the Sistine Chapel, if you'd like. That would be nice. As much as I'd love another day like yesterday where we just stayed in bed, I needed to start distancing myself from Dante. I feared my heart wouldn't survive my impending departure otherwise. Great. He placed another soft kiss on my nose, then stood, retreating into the bathroom. I closed my eyes, basking in my post-sex state of complete satisfaction. After what seemed like only an instant, Dante stirred me awake. Momentarily disoriented, I opened my eyes to see him standing in front of me, his hair damp from a shower, dressed in a dark suit with a charcoal shirt. It was dark, and more dark. But I loved how it looked on him. I'll be back soon. He leaned down and feathered his lips against mine. I'll be thinking of you the entire time. And the next time you'll be fucking me, I murmured groggily, raising my brows. No, Eleanor. Just thinking about you. Although fucking you is the deliciously sweet icing on the cake, I didn't ask you to stay with me so I could sleep with you whenever I wanted. I asked you to stay because I like you as a person. Probably more than I should. And I hate the idea you'll be leaving soon. I hate that I have to leave you even for a minute because every minute I'm away from you is a minute I won't get back. He lowered his lips to mine. Don't think for a second this is just about sex. It's not. Not anymore. At least for me. And I hope it's not for you, either. I swallowed hard. It's not. Good. I'll be back shortly. Have a wonderful morning. Eleanor. He kissed me one last time, then retreated from the bedroom, closing my eyes. I drew in a long breath and stretched in the bed. I was tired, but my mind wouldn't let me go back to sleep, so I got up. After a refreshing shower and dressing in a pair of shorts and a flowing light blue tank top, I decided it would be the perfect morning to just sit on the veranda and enjoy the invigorating sounds of Rome. I checked my reflection in the mirror, a wide grin crossing my face when I noticed a large bruise on my neck. Upon further inspection, I also observed red and purple marks on my wrists that were prominent against my fair skin. At least I had some damn good concealer. I'd have to make sure to put some on before going to the Vatican later. I could have been wrong, but I didn't think it would be appropriate to walk through Vatican City with teeth marks on my neck. Pulling my brown waves into a messy ponytail, I retreated from the room with a bounce in my step. I made a coffee and grabbed a Danish, then headed toward the bookshelf, choosing a book from Dante's enormous collection. I was surprised to see so many English titles. I settled into a lounge chair on the veranda and got lost in some psychological thriller, enjoying my coffee and the warm sun on my skin, forgetting about everything else in my life. Not much time had passed before I heard the subtle sound of the apartment door opening, then closing. I glanced at my watch to see Dante had only been gone an hour. Excitement filled me as I swung my legs over the side of the lounge chair, practically running back into the apartment. That was a short meeting, I said, a grin on my face as I entered the living area, my eyes taking a minute to adjust from the sunlight. Did you not get enough of me this morning and needed to rush home for more? A sudden chill washed over me when my vision became clear. My gaze falling on a tall, lanky figure standing in Dante's living room as if he owned the place. I came to an abrupt stop. Hello, Ellie, he sneered. Enjoying our honeymoon? Swallowing hard, my mind raced as I stood face to face with my ex-fiancé. I stepped back, observing with my own eyes why Mila had voiced her concern to me all those days ago. Brock looked off crazed, sinister, evil. He continued toward me, his eyes wild. My heart pounded in my chest as I continued my slow retreat, scanning Dante's apartment for anything I could possibly use as a weapon. As Brock approached a side table by the couch, he picked up a copy of Dante's first book, smiling an eerie smile at me, holding it beside his face, the warmth in Dante's eyes a cruel juxtaposition to the poison in Brock's. He said, I see you've met my brother. To be continued? Playlist First Heartbreak, Tori Kelly. Somebody Loved, The Weepies. Move Together, James Bay. Wicked Games, The Weekend. Caught Up in You, Kate Vogelfeet. Inland Sky, Terrible Love, Birdie. When I Get My Hands on You, The New Basement Tapes. My Skin, Natalie Merchant. Flesh, Simon Curtis. Addicted, Saving Abel. Under My Skin, Peter Bradley Adams. Say You Won't Let Go, James Arthur. Acknowledgements. When I was approached in late 2016 to participate in this fun project that would eventually come to be titled The Vault, I looked at it as a challenge. Most may not see writing a 20,000, 35,000 word novella as a challenge, but it is. Most of my books hover in the 100K word area. Developing characters and making the reader become emotionally attached to them is no easy task. So an idea popped in my head to write a story about a woman who decided to run out on her wedding and head to Rome, where she runs into a handsome, sexy Italian chef. I thought it would be a short, sinful, sexy story of my heroine's sexual awakening. Little did I know that my hero would have a lot to say, as well. Which is why I made the decision to make their story a little more involved than I originally planned. I vowed from the very beginning of this writing journey that I would never publish anything less than my best, and to give this intricate story the attention it needs and deserves. I couldn't rush it, which is why a 35K word novella has now morphed into a 200K word series. Writing a book, even a short novella, is no easy task. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes. First, I want to thank A.D. Justice for inviting me to participate in this amazing project with some incredible talent. I'm truly humbled to be able to call you a friend since I started out in this crazy author world. A big thanks to my beta readers Lynn, Stacy, Melissa, Joelle, Victoria, Sylvia. Thanks for letting me leave you hanging over the perch for a little bit. Thank you to my wonderful editor, Kim Young, the only woman I'll ever trust with my babies. I truly appreciate how much effort you put into making my story as good as it can be. I couldn't do this without you. A huge thanks to Laura Rossi, my Italian consultant, who took the time out of her own writing schedule to take a look at this manuscript and make sure all the Italian phrases were correct. I am forever grateful. As always, I couldn't do any of this without the support of my wonderful husband, who has supported me since day one. Even when I had less than 1,000 followers on Facebook and was happy to sell 10 books a day. Thank you to all you amazing bloggers who volunteer your time to promote all us indie authors. None of this would be possible without your help. Last, but certainly not least, thank you to you, my wonderful readers, whether you've read all my books or this is your first one. Thanks for picking up this book and reading. Don't worry, part 2 is coming very soon. Much love. Books by T.K. Leigh.